Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. And I've just been signed out of my stupid document as I go to start the show, of course.
Yeah.
No, we're good. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering to discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions on a thing. It was everybody else jumping into the doc, finally, when we started the show that, kicked me out, I guess. Anyway, this show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, once again, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit tired. Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What the fucking hell, Cameron? Wake the fuck... oh my god. I'm going to hate this show already. Cool. Everything is just...
It's going to be a good one.
No. Logan Wilkinson, how you doing, Logan?
I'm doing good. I was actually going to say that I really love Cam's outfit. I love that shirt. I think it looks so nice.
Oh, I forgot I was going to say Chewie, we're home. I'm sorry. I couldn't remember what I was going to say.
Just say hi. Just say fucking hi. You don't have to have a 5-second brain fart. And Frank Bizzani, how you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
There we go.
Oh my god. Every time, Cameron, I want to punch you in the face for the lag going into whatever little bit you're going to do, and then you forget the bit entirely.
The pregnant pauses.
Okay. This is our summer of Star Wars. We're in the sequel trilogy, so this is the energy that's coming alongside the sequel trilogy, because I think this is where we're going to start getting into probably the more divisive ones. Maybe not this movie, but definitely next week with Last Jedi. I'm sure there'll be a larger split in our opinions, but we're doing basically all summer long, we're doing a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff. So if you've missed it, we've already done the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. Now we're here on the sequel trilogy, and then we're going to wrap up the summer with kind of the one-offs like Clone Wars, like Solo, like Rogue One, and Empire of Dreams, the lovely little documentary about the making of the original trilogy. We'll bring it all full circle when we end up on that one. And today we are all about Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which was originally released December 18th, 2015, which marked a shift from the Star Wars movies coming out in May. They made the move to the holiday push. Other notable releases, it's so weird to think of that was only 6 years ago when Star Wars came back at this point. Because we've gotten so much Star Wars since then, probably. Other releases of the time, just for Logan, I pulled in Spectre here, which came out November 6th. One of his favorite Bond movies, I'm sure.
Dude, I hate that one too.
I actually really like Spectre.
Trash.
We have Spotlight, which was the Best Picture winner of that year. Also came out November 6th.
Great movie.
Excellent movie. That's an incredible movie. Spectre's the one where Oh, no, I'm thinking of Skyfall. I apologize. I don't think I've ever seen Spectre.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Yeah, Spectre is to this point the last Bond movie since the
That's right. It's been
what
6
no
years.
No Time to Die is the one that's still
it
to
keeps
come.
getting delayed.
That got delayed because of the pandemic stuff. So yeah, Spectre. We've had all of the Star Wars movies in the time that one Bond movie will have come out. This also a time capsule for where 2015 was. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 came out November 20th of that year, which that feels like a lifetime ago as well.
Yep.
Man, people were just that film. I feel killed the people were finally we're done with the YA novel adaptations. That was the last one that I can think of that was
I mean, it was definitely the last series that really hit. I feel like Maze Runner is the one I think of when I think people just Maze Runner or what was it Insurgent
Divergent.
or something like that. Divergent. There you go.
I think of Divergent as where Divergent was so bad, it was so just people were just done with that genre. The second film did so poorly. The third one came out on TV or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maze Runner is great. I actually liked that first Maze Runner movie.
The issue I had with Mockingjay was making it a two-parter. Stretching it out that way. It did not need to be a two-part movie. So
this is also in the era of like the Hobbit, like
the
Hobbit Part 1, Part 2,
Trilogy,
Part 3, the trilogy, like just really not needing to do that. Although, if I recall, no, Part 2 is where he's not in it. I was going to say Part 1 is Philip Hoffman's.
Philip Seymour Hoffman, yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I think he's
he in
in
Part
Part 2 as well, because I think they filmed them all as one, but yeah, it was pretty much his last thing.
Yeah, it's his last film, which is really odd for the kind of actor that Philip Seymour Hoffman was. That the last film he's ever in is like a young adult novel adaptation.
Mockingjay Part 2, yeah.
I mean, he's a good role in
Mockingjay
it.
Part 2.
But
he's great. He's Philip Seymour Hoffman's
great in a lot of things he did, yeah, but
yeah.
He's that serious Count Dooku, like legendary actor that's just here for like
just
killing it.
I mean, it was all like it's also a series that had like Donald Sutherland and stuff in it, so like it was not hurting for like talented people attached to it, because it was the big thing. I remember that was pretty much like the big one after Harry Potter wrapped.
100%, yeah. As somebody who read all the books, like, yeah, no, it was pretty, like, for a pretty above average like series, the film adaptations were like quite above that, like to the point of being like pretty good.
I remember making plans to go see the first one with friends, and between when we made those plans and when we actually saw the movie, I read the first book. It was like 2 days turnaround or whatever, and then after seeing the movie, I read like the next 2 books like the rest that weekend or whatever. I borrowed them from my sister, so like really easy series to get through. But and then the movies came out for another 4 years basically after that. Anyway, also in this time we had on November 25th we had the movie Creed, bringing back kind of the Rocky franchise, but with Michael B. Jordan in
so
the
damn
lead
good
kind of role.
That film is phenomenal.
Yeah. On the Disney Pixar side of things, this is when The Good Dinosaur came out, November 25th. Arguably Pixar's weakest outing. Which I finally saw for the first time a couple months ago.
Cars 2?
It's there with Cars 2. Yes. No, yes. So I watched it for our friends over at the Castle Vault, which is another Disney Plus centric series, and they were doing basically like a Pixar interview kind of thing, like Kind of Funny is doing, and they brought me on for The Good Dinosaur, and I ranked The Good Dinosaur right above Cars 2 at the bottom of their list. Because I was like, I can't, like, Mater is such a terrible character, and so, like, it was such a stupid idea to make Mater the central. So yes, it is the second weakest of the Pixar movies in my estimation.
I mean, Cars isn't a strong entry to begin with, so
yeah, right. Speaking of weak entries, Point Break had a revival on December 25th.
Not good.
I'd completely forgotten. Like every couple of years, I forget that they made a new Point Break that wasn't
Who was in it?
Fast and Furious. I don't know. It was like I think it was like No Names.
Yeah,
it was just
no one
really
that was really big.
Yeah.
The first film's just perfect. Why would you ever need to remake it?
I don't know. Perfect is a strong fucking word there, Cameron.
For what Point Break is, the film that it is perfect for being the film that it is.
Yeah.
Remaking it, you're not going to make it better.
Also,
you're not going to make a superior film.
I mean, you are, and it's
Winstone,
Fast and Furious, or it's
not really
Fuzz.
anyone super well known in the remake. It looks like
those films ran because Point Break walked.
Yes.
If there was no Point Break, we don't get either of those 2 films. So
I mean, I don't dispute that, I suppose. Also coming out that Christmas, we had The Hateful Eight from the Tarantino side of things, and The Revenant from the Leonardo DiCaprio.
Still never seen
going fucking insane and trying to fight a bear or whatever that one was about.
Yeah, win an Oscar. Yeah.
Oh, that one's actually because that one's actually based off of a true story.
Yeah,
The Revenant's based off a true story. It's a guy who was like left for dead, and it's like his revenge story. And the whole bear thing is like a bear tried to eat his like almost dead body, and he had to fight it off. It's like the story itself was rad. The way they shot it, like it's actually a really, really cool film. I still have not seen The Hateful Eight.
I've not seen any of those last 3. I don't watch too much in the way of Tarantino anyway.
That's fair.
I liked, I think the first like act and a half of Hateful Eight, and then I think it sort of falls apart as it drags on and it kind of becomes a bit more unhinged. And then it's like the last act I don't think is spectacular, but then the last like 5 to 10 minutes of that movie is pretty great. Tarantino I think is pretty good at ending a movie, and he does that one in quite a flourish.
He does kind of have that a lot when you're like, you got me back. Like he
Yeah,
loses
back
you,
on
but
board.
you're
All
like,
right,
you got me
yeah.
back, Tarantino. Like you're smiling into the credits.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know how this Inglourious Basterds film is supposed to end. Oh, it ends that way. Oh,
Yeah, right.
Two thumbs,
Bad
10 out of
is so
10.
Good. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
goddamn. That's a great.
Force Awakens had a runtime of 2 hours and 18 minutes. In the Star Wars film timeline of things, this, of course, was the first new Star Wars in quite a while, but we did have The Clone Wars, which came out August 15th, 2008. So it wasn't the first movie since the prequels had wrapped up. We would get this in 2015, and then Rogue One would follow it the following year, December 16th, 2016. So it was basically the plan was it's going to be a saga film every other year, and then like these standalone stories in the middle, and then that basically went until Solo, and then stopped.
Yep.
So, roll call. Who's who of the film? We're in a new trilogy, so we're going to get a whole new batch of names once again. The director, of course, J.J. Abrams, who was known for Felicity and Lost and Alias and TV stuff until he went to Mission Impossible 3. And then, of course, his basically audition to do a Star Wars was when he rebooted Star Trek. And there are a lot of videos out there that are basically just like comparing Star Trek moments to A New Hope. He would then go to do Super 8 and Star Trek Into Darkness, and then he would come do Star Wars Force Awakens, and then he would later come back for The Rise of Skywalker, which, of course, we will discuss in a couple weeks' time. Writers for this, we had Lawrence Kasdan returning. He had previously done Empire Strikes Back, as well as a whole bunch of Indiana Jones stuff. He also did Return of the Jedi, The Bodyguard, Wyatt Earp, and he would go on to do the story for Solo, a Star Wars story. J.J.
I
Abrams
don't know
also,
if I noticed
yeah.
before that. I didn't mean, but like, I didn't know that he did Wyatt Earp, because Wyatt Earp is great. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to that. That's a great movie.
Yeah, I think that came up when we did Empire, but maybe you weren't there for that. No, it was Frank that wasn't
I was
on
definitely
Empire.
there for Empire. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
I'll give it a shout out again. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Shout out to the bodyguard.
J.J. Abrams had so prior to like his like when he started kind of breaking out, he had done like a little bit of screenwriting stuff as like Jeffrey Abrams or something, I think is what he's credited as. He'd done his first movie was a movie called Taking Care of Business. Then he did one I had not thought about in probably 20 years called Gone Fishin', which is with Danny Glover and Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
He's the screenwriter of Armageddon as well.
Hell yeah.
That's a good one.
And then Mission Impossible 3, Super 8, and Rise of Skywalker. And then rounding out the screenwriters for this one, we had Michael Arndt, who had previously done Little Miss Sunshine, Toy Story 3, and The Hunger Games Catching Fire, as well as he was one of the writers on Inside Out, the Pixar movie from earlier in 2015, prior to The Good Dinosaur. Starring, we of course have returning in varying roles. We have Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher returning as Han, Luke, and Leia. And they are like top credited as a result. One of the trivia things I have is basically like this is the first time Harrison Ford was the like headlines top line star, and as a result, the first time a non-Jedi was the like first credited star for a Star Wars movie. Adam Driver, of course, playing Kylo Ren, who's probably best known for his work on the TV series Girls prior to this, but he'd also done the movies Lincoln and Inside Llewyn Davis, and has gone on to do stuff like Logan Lucky, Black Klansman, Marriage Story, and he will be in the upcoming film House of Gucci. Daisy Ridley, playing Rey, was a relative unknown prior to Star Wars. She'd done like some TV stuff, but it was all like pretty much one-shots and stuff.
Very minor.
And since then, she's gone on to do Murder on the Orient Express. She was the titular role in the film Ophelia. She was in Chaos Walking, which is one of those, like, it got, hampered by the pandemic, but it was her and Tom Holland in that movie that came out, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months ago now. And she'll be in the upcoming video game 12 Minutes. Alongside, I believe, James McAvoy's the other voice in that one.
Yeah, I think so.
And Willem Dafoe.
Sounds right.
John Boyega playing
Willem
Finn.
Dafoe sounds right, yeah.
John Boyega, best known prior to this for his work probably in Attack the Block.
Absolutely.
And since Star Wars has gone on to do Pacific Rim Uprising and is going to be in the upcoming, or at least like announced, Attack the Block 2. Oscar Isaac playing Poe Dameron. One of the people, there's like a couple of people I think who were in this that were in the Russell Crowe Robin Hood. He was also in Sucker Punch, and he was another one in Inside Llewyn Davis, as well as Ex Machina prior to this. Afterwards, he would go on to be in X-Men Apocalypse. Poor guy. And then he is also in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And he's been playing Gomez Addams in the animated Addams Family movies. I believe there's one out, and then there's like another one in development. He will soon be seen in Dune, which is another one that, like, in another world would have come out already. He will also be Moon Knight in the MCU. He is attached to star in a Metal Gear Solid movie as Snake, and he will eventually be in Spider-Verse 2, presumably.
Who is he in Spider-Verse?
He is, I think he's credited as, like, Interesting Man. He's basically Spider-Man 2099 in the post-credits. Who goes back to 1966 and does the whole, like, Spider-Man pointing meme.
Okay, I was just like, he's not any of the other Spider people, I don't think. Okay.
Yep, yeah. He was a secret tease because they wanted to put him in the film, but they couldn't make it work. So,
Okay. Cool.
He's slated to be on a more starring role for Into the Spider-Verse too.
Yeah. It's not as IMDb yet though. So.
Yeah, no. Interestingly enough, there's another film he was in not too long ago that he was in that film with Pedro Pascal. They were they were doing some like PMC or like Navy SEAL stuff. But Pedro Pascal and him are really good buddies, and so it's cool that, like, Pedro Pascal comes in as Mando in Mandalorian, and then we get, of course, Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron. So,
don't know what movie that from his IMDb that would be. So, but
that's fair. I just remember that they did a variety video where they did the Google search thing.
Yeah,
so they're fun. Good. They're just all great guys. So,
yep.
Like I said earlier, anyway, we'll get into it later. But.
Lupita Nyong'o playing Maz Kanata here. Best known prior to this from 12 Years a Slave. And then she would go on to be in The Jungle Book, Black Panther, and Us. And she will, of course, be returning to the MCU in the upcoming Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Andy Serkis, another MCU alum, is Supreme Leader Snoke. Of course, best known as Gollum / Smeagol from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films, as well as King Kong and the Rise of the Planet of the Apes trilogy.
She's fantastic in.
Yep, and in the MCU, he made his debut in Avengers: Age of Ultron as Ulysses Klaue, which got a little bit more of a spotlight in Black Panther, and he will be Alfred Pennyworth in the upcoming The Batman.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Domhnall Gleeson playing General Hux made his way into the Harry Potter series at the tail end in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows as, I believe, Charlie Weasley, the eldest of the bunch.
Yeah, I think so.
Second eldest.
Is it second eldest? Who's
Bill's
the oldest? Yeah, that's right. He was also in the movie About Time, which I'll give a shout out to because former nerd Ben Bellevue, of course, it is one of his absolute favorites. So give some love to that one. And he was also in The Revenant, and he was in The Revenant like right around this time, I guess. And then can also be seen these days in the Peter Rabbit series. So, cool. Anthony Daniels reprising his role as C-3PO. Excuse me. Max von Sydow playing Lor San Tekka in the opening scene here, notable from being in Flash Gordon many years ago, which of course is what Lucas wanted to do, but didn't get to do that, so he did Star Wars instead. So full circle thing. He was also in Minority Report and Shutter Island, and he was another one in the Russell Crowe Robin Hood, as well as the film Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. And he was the Three-Eyed Raven in the Game of Thrones on HBO. Peter Mayhew reprises his role as Chewbacca, at least in some parts. This is also where Joonas Suotamo starts taking over the role as well, because Peter Mayhew was just kind of getting too old and frail to do it. So I think he's still in there as like a voice and possibly in some of the scenes. And then certainly as a Chewbacca consultant. Gwendolyn Christie playing Captain Phasma. Prior to this, probably best known from playing Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones. But she was also in The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 that came out that same month. She has since been in the film Welcome to Marwen, which is a tiny little thing that I enjoyed a couple years ago with Steve Carell. And she will be heard later this year, I believe, in the upcoming The Sandman series. Long in development, long in anticipation series.
Do we know who she's playing?
I believe she's playing the devil, Lucifer.
Oh, that's going to be good. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sandman's awesome, by the way, if nobody's read it. It's super freaking good.
Yeah. Then a handful of other little cameo things in here. Simon Pegg playing Unkar Plutt, the junk dealer that gives Rey the rations and who, was one of the many people who'd stolen the Millennium Falcon. J.J. Abrams' good luck charm Greg Grunberg playing Snap Wexley, one of the pilots out there. Warwick Davis returns to the series in the role of Wallivin, who is somebody in Maz Kanata's place, one of the people at the bar or something like that. Ken Lung, who I remember from Lost, is Admiral Statura. Billy Lord, aka Carrie Fisher's daughter, playing Lieutenant Connix. Daniel Craig in a sneaky role as the stormtrooper that Rey convinces to release her. Ben Schwartz and Bill Hader were the BB-8 voice / BB-8 consultants. And apparently Ed Sheeran is in here as an uncredited stormtrooper somewhere. So there you go.
More well received than his
Game of Thrones
on Game of Thrones one.
Helps when people can't see him, probably. Yeah.
Or they don't spend 5 minutes having him sing.
Yeah. They have a bad feeling about this. Anybody catch where the I have a bad feeling about this is?
Han says it.
Han Solo.
Yep.
Yeah, Han says it.
Yep.
I believe that makes him and Obi-Wan in the running for they pretty much are the ones who say that line the most. In the galactic timeline of things, The Force Awakens takes place in 34 ABY after the Battle of Yavin. Events prior to this movie in 34 ABY can also be found in the Poe Dameron comic or the Star Wars Resistance animated series. As a
heads up, Poe Dameron's comic is not 100% canon anymore.
Okay. It's still listed as in a whole bunch of stuff in the galactic timeline.
Yeah,
so.
it is. There's stuff in Rise of Skywalker that oversees it. I guess is the supersedes it as canon. So there's actually massive chunks of his backstory that they show in the comic that is just not
that Abrams was never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shocking that stuff happens. It wasn't until obviously we'll kind of get into it with Last Jedi picking up pretty much right where this one leaves off, but I didn't realize this is one of the first sets of Star Wars movies where there isn't a gap in time between the movies. So Last Jedi is also going to take place in 34 ABY. And there isn't a ton fleshing out that time period, so I don't have a ton of extra little fun facts. But since it, of course, is kind of the impetus for this movie, the galactic timeline does identify that Luke Skywalker went into exile 6 years earlier in 28 ABY. So that's apparently how long it's been since Kylo Ren went crazy. Other trivia. John Williams received his 50th Oscar nomination for scoring this film because, good Lord, John Williams. This is the first.
You don't miss.
Yeah, this is the first J.J. Abrams film to not have a musical score by Michael Giacchino. Aptly enough, Giacchino stated in an interview that he would rather hear the music of John Williams in a new Star Wars film than his own. Giacchino's name shows up in Episode 7 as a stormtrooper, though, so he is another one of those kind of like hidden, uncredited stormtroopers as friend of J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, I would not want to try to replace him at all.
I mean,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, no.
Right, yeah.
John Williams, like, no, thank you. Like, it's like, oh well, we were gonna have John Williams do it. Oh, so have John Williams do it.
Yeah.
Is John Williams dead yet? No. Have him keep making Star Wars music.
Yeah.
It won't like. That's it. That's the man.
Yeah, I mean, that much more credit to Ludwig Göransson for pulling it off in Mandalorian so well.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, this is the only time Harrison Ford has received top billing in a Star Wars film, making him the first non-Jedi character to be credited first. The X-Wing Blue Squadron makes its debut in The Force Awakens. In the original Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope, Luke Skywalker was originally supposed to fly with the Blue Squadron, but the blue markings on the starfighters proved to be difficult to film against blue screens, so it was changed to Red Squadron.
Yep.
When Finn bumps against the Djarik chess table, the game that appears is the same game played by Chewbacca and R2-D2 in Episode 4, so that has just been sitting there dusty for some 34 years is what we hear there. The small creature that was thrown to the ground by the considerably larger creature is seen getting back to its feet and then smashing his larger opponent with a mace-like weapon. As we touched on a little bit, I think last week, this is the first Star Wars film to not have Kenny Baker cast as R2-D2. He is, however, credited as the R2-D2 consultant. Sadly, he would pass away on August 13th, 2016, at the age of 81. So he did live for this movie to be released, but was not actually in the R2-D2 costume prop. I don't whatever you would want to call that.
The suit. Yeah. No, he was just too old at that point.
Yeah.
Kenny Baker's truly a treasure of a human being, and a phenomenal representation of those who are afflicted with dwarfism and other growth ailments, and making a tremendous impact on film with his work and
100%.
representation.
And the last bit of trivia there is, sorry, I'm actually just finally logging back into the document, is that this was the third movie all time to pass the $2 billion mark after Avatar in 2009 and Titanic back in 1997. So, shout out to the $2 billion club and all the money that we've poured into going to see that movie. So yeah. That is the trivia I have pulled up for this. So what do we think? How does it hold up? Especially, I guess, like in the context of we now know where the rest of the trilogy goes. And we have all seen the rest of the trilogy. So yeah, what do we think about this movie and its kind of place in the larger Star Wars universe? Frank, let me throw it to you first.
Yeah, so going back to it, I mean, I guess I'll just start off with I do like it. Going back to it, we'll see how the other kind of stacks up going against the other ones, but this might be my favorite of the sequel movies. Going into this, after, having seen it in the theater, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Like, it wasn't a bad movie, it wasn't terrible, but like, this was one of the ones where I was so excited for more Star Wars and for more to see it again. I watched every trailer, frame by frame. They're like, oh, this is the international trailer. It has a scene that's not in the US trailer. Like, we were going deep. And it's one of those things where it's like, I really did put the entire movie together. I cannot think of only a handful of things that we really got wrong or we didn't nail on the head. So it was like watching it in the theater. You're just like, yeah, okay. And then that's going to happen. Oh, we haven't gotten to that planet yet. It's just like, and this is just, I mean, I kind of ruined it for myself, but so
say, Frank.
No, it was my fault. I acknowledge, but it was just like super. Watching it in the theater just didn't really hit, and I didn't love it. And then I watched it a couple of years later, and I liked it more. And then watching it again now, and especially kind of like Trevor said, in the context of having gotten all the other sequel movies now, I still think like I actually liked this probably the most on this, like the third viewing, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I got the most out of it. Although I do think that then the worst thing about this movie now is the fact of the movies that follow it, because they set up things in this movie that just like, yeah, that doesn't matter. None of this matters. That goes nowhere. This guy dies. Like it's just so like,
yeah.
That's the,
I feel
that,
you, man.
that-
I feel you, brother.
to me at this point, that's like the thing that kind of then ruins the movie for me, is like this future sight we now have of like what could have been, or because then there's even things that happen where I'm like, that could have been so cool, or like, why didn't they run with that idea? Like, especially for me, I don't want to keep going on, but it's a lot of stuff with like Kylo, and just, even like that we could have got so many, even with Snoke, like Snoke does nothing. So it's like, but yeah, that's kind of my take on it, is that I didn't like it as much before, but I do like it a lot more now. And overall, I mean, it's still a fun movie. It's still Star Wars. It still gives us a lot of great action scenes and a lot of fun stuff. So I still like it.
Yeah. Cameron, what about you?
I really like. I've gone on record of saying like I really love this film. I loved it when it came out in theaters. I was just so excited for more Star Wars. I was at the time I was actually going into that film. I was really apprehensive about how to feel about it because, as you guys well know, I am a gigantic freaking nerd when it comes to Star Wars, and I've read and been like indulged in so much of the expanded universe that got put into quote unquote legacy status because of this film. And I was really concerned about like where things were going to go. I know that there's an entire like as long as I've been alive, series of books that are now just like non-canon that like were a major part of like my literature that I read when I was growing up. That I'm walking out of this film, I said, you know what, and this is where it comes down to. I was so excited to see where we were going to go with this, because it's so J.J. Abrams does what he does so great, was he builds this mystery box, and the mystery box was built to be really cool, and there were so many of them. It's like who is like Finn was taken from his family, so what is like Finn's identity? Like what is his like journey in finding his identity? And like Poe Dameron is this ace pilot, but like he survived miraculously, and like is that going to be like and he was like clearly like seriously tortured and his brain was messed with. Is that going to come back up later? And we just like have all these things, like all these plot like threads get like created, right? They get created and they're beautiful, and I'm so excited to see the tapestry that they make, and they don't make a great tapestry, and yeah, like I have to deal with that. But this film itself does things so well, and I can't emphasize how beautiful this film is. Mm-hmm. The way that it's shot, cinematography wise, this film is a masterpiece. There are so many like shots that if you're like, okay, cool, just freeze frame for a moment. Okay, that shot right there, that is art. Like that is just art. The way lighting is, the way, like just as an example, the bridge scene towards the end, where you have the door's been opened, Rey and Finn have opened the door, you have the last bit of sunlight coming in from the sun, it's hitting it, it's perfectly encapsulated in that moment of like, this is a man who, talk about Kylo, this is a man who is surrounded in darkness all the time. Every scene he's in, even in the scenes on not Jakku, but Maz Kanata's planet, when they're there, it's like shrouded. So he's always surrounded by darkness throughout this entire film. And then all of a sudden his father confronts him, calls him Ben. And like light is like this like moment of light piercing through the darkness. And it's like, he's so good at it. And he does such a great job in this film of laying these things out. And the worst thing that could have happened, and I'll talk about it more next week, but the worst thing you could have done is give Rian Johnson a mystery box and expect him just to like unbox it like a normal human being. And I'll get really deep into that next week, but for right now, I just have to say, like, I do walk away from this film, like still excited for like, I'll get into this 2 weeks from now when we talk more about it, but with the kind of rebirth and like the excitement and like the jolt of adrenaline that this film was able to give Star Wars and give it a platform of like a foundation for where it could go forward was excellent and is excellent. It's still an excellent film, I think. Still love it. So
Yeah, this is definitely where we're in the era of like fans are now creating Star Wars rather than Lucas creating Star Wars, obviously. And there was like, I remember there being like a huge sense of like, what is that going to be like in the lead up to this movie? What is that going to look like? And then we started seeing those trailers. We started seeing like JJ releasing set footage of like practical effects. And that was like, that got everybody who hated the prequels on board. And we're like, yay, they're doing practical stuff. Awesome. Great. They're back in
BB-8 was a real
Tunisia.
droid. Like he was a real thing.
Yeah, like I remember BB-8 coming out at Star Wars Celebration and being like, that is the coolest damn thing. Like they had like robotics people create this actual robot. That's really awesome. And now you can go buy one at fucking Star Wars Land. It's really cool. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of like feelings going into and then coming out of the theater that day. Logan, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I lean more towards Cameron in terms of the initial reactions, right? Like, as someone who also very much loves Star Wars, right? I talk about it being one of my 2 kind of pillar film franchises alongside James Bond. I was very excited, right? I didn't hate the prequels like some people did, but I mean, they're definitely not my favorite as we've kind of gone over now. And so to have it kind of be this kind of rebirth of the Star Wars series, it felt like, right? I thought was really exciting, right? I don't know how you couldn't watch the trailers and not feel this sense of like awe and anticipation and excitement and adrenaline run through. Like, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, they're just fantastic trailers. They're so well done, I think, because Star Wars is a almost unique series in the way it's woven around like the like pop culture like fabric of the globe, really, right? It is one of the few like global film franchises, and so I think it just tapped into that mythology so well. It evoked kind of these classic themes and ideas so well, and so yeah, get into the theater and watching it was such a like incredible experience, right? Like it is one of the things, like it is, watching Force Awakens is probably my favorite movie theater going experience, or certainly in my top 3. Like it'd be like that, Dark Knight, and like 1 or 2 other movies would be like jostling among it, right? And I think, right, for me it was obviously watching the original trilogy on VHS tapes that they had, with like me and my dad and my brother watching like again and again and again, right? And then for the prequels, obviously all of us going to the movie theaters together. But this was the trilogy that like I went and watched in the theater with my 2 younger cousins. We went and saw all 3 of the films together. And I think the kind of generational aspect of my Star Wars going experience, and the fact that, you know, I had watched the prequels in the theaters, obviously, but like this was different. Now I was like a full-grown adult for these movies, right? And to kind of have someone younger than me now, like that I was like given the nerdy Star Wars facts to, right? And like tell them like, oh, that's why that moment's so cool. Like this is get hype kind of thing. I had like a different dimension to it, right? And so I think for me, I stepped out of, you know, the movie theater for Force Awakens, and the crowd was so electric, right? Like that was the thing, right? Like going there, I think I went the second day it was out, and like the electricity to it, right? And so I had loved the movie, right? I've talked before about how like at the time, if you'd asked me, I'd have been like, this is above A New Hope. It's only below Empire and Return of the Jedi. Loved the movie, right? And then in the kind of intervening years, people kept being like, the movie's a carbon copy of A New Hope. And I was always like, no, it's not. It's a really cheap, I think, like slap against it. But people would just kind of say it. I was like, maybe the movie's not as good as I like thought it was. Like I would doubt myself. And then I would watch it again and be like, no, this movie's fucking awesome, right? And then like I would just like not watch it for a few years, and people would be like, it's not that good. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's fantastic, actually. And so to get to it here, and it was literally within the first like 5 minutes, right, to Cam and Frank's point, I was like, this movie fucking rules. Like it's so good. Like it it's just like the way I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it just has like that spark to it that like the prequels, I think, always struggled to kind of capture again, that the original trilogy had so well, right? Like, it just feels like a Star Wars movie, and it feels so good, right? It's so fun. I think Cameron had a great point where it is absolutely beautiful. Like, I think in terms of the shots, I think what they do in terms of colors and like saturation, it's so well done. I think the slow build to getting you to the luscious green worlds you're going to see later on was really smart. And like, I think it's just so well paced. It's so well structured. I think it's really funny. They get that sense of humor back in Star Wars again. They get the fact that it's an alien world in Star Wars again, which is something that I really love about the series. Yeah, I mean, I love it. In terms of like where I'll rank it, I'm still going back and forth in my rankings. I won't decide probably until we get to that point in the podcast, but it's absolutely fantastic. I think it is easily the best of the sequels, I'll say for myself, in terms of what I wanted. Because yeah, like, I think for me, I kind of came at it a different way from Cam, where I was less affected by the expanded universe kind of being snapped out of existence, because I was always like, it's not real. I only ever counted the movies as canon anyway, so it was like, that was fine for me. But the fact that like when Disney first bought Lucasfilm, before they even announced what the movies like were going to look like, I was like, they had bought it, and I was like, cool. All I want them not to do are like these things, and I listed them out, and there were like 3 or 4 principles. And by the end of this trilogy, they will have done all the things I didn't want them to do. Almost like they heard me and were like, we're gonna fuck this guy's dreams up. But at this point in time and in this movie, none of that mattered, right? Like, I think every beat worked so well, and even the Luke stuff I think is done and threaded throughout the movie really well. And like, again, like, we'll get to it in a minute, I'm sure, but like, the final part of the movie is absolutely fantastic. I love the final scene of the movie. And so yeah, like, I think, you know, J.J. Abrams is not a perfect filmmaker. No one is, obviously. But I think this movie is the best version of going back to these characters we love that I could envision we could have gotten. Like, if you have to make a follow-up to Return of the Jedi, this is probably the best we were going to get. And I think it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, for me, I mean, based on kind of how everybody's talked about it, I think I'm probably the coolest on it, but I really like the movie.
Well, yeah.
And it is like my frustration with like seeing the flaws of J.J. Abrams now come out that much more, given where things go from here. Because I love the characters that are set up here. I love the introduction to all these characters. Everyone is like great. All the performances are phenomenal, like top-notch stuff. So I love, you know, this mysterious new prototype, or like not prototype, but like the Luke Skywalker type in Rey, and what's that character going to be about. Like, I love, and Daisy Ridley's delightful in that. Kylo Ren is probably my favorite Star Wars character, apart from the last 10 minutes of Rise of Skywalker. But like, I love everything that Adam Driver is bringing to this film. And the notion of like Finn as a stormtrooper that basically goes rogue and turns to the light is like a really cool, interesting character. Poe Dameron as like the Han Solo of this kind of generation, more or less. That, to your point, Cam, obviously one of the other trivia things that I didn't dive into because it seems like it's such like well-worn territory is the idea that Poe was going to originally die there, and it was going to be like Finn carrying that story, but then J.J. Abrams really liked Oscar Isaac enough to basically write him back into the story and just kind of not do it in any kind of meaningful ways, just like he's suddenly back. Okay, sure, whatever. We're along for the ride. Let's have some fun. So I love like the new cast of characters that come in. Obviously, BB-8 is another. Like, BB-8 is a great continuation in this saga of your R2-D2 type character and stuff. So like, there's so much joy there, and really, what I think it comes down to for me is just the realization that the J.J. Abrams is really great at starting things and terrible at finishing things.
He's horrible at it.
And because of
answering his questions he creates is his worst.
Yeah.
Like, his worst thing that he does.
Because of Rise of Skywalker, I now like there's disdain from the decisions that he makes in that movie that like come back to haunt this movie now in hindsight.
Yes.
And so yeah, that's that is the probably the most frustrating element for me is that like and the Poe example right there is even like everybody talks about how, hey, it'd be great if the sequel trilogy had like a plan all along, and the first movie didn't even have a plan all along. Hence Poe coming back randomly. I do like, you know, where
Which I'll forgive it for that. Bringing Poe back, I'll forgive that.
Oh yeah, I mean, like
it's
it's I applaud the choice to like realize that Oscar Isaac is great and should have been kept in the series. They just could have done, you know, anything to explain that, as opposed to just like, yeah, I got thrown from the wreckage and woke up, you know, that night or whatever. It's like, okay, nope. I like where we kind of like pick up with the characters that we pick up with, i.e. Han and Chewie, and of course like the like Chewie we're home moment was it's one that to Frank's credit, like the trailers absolutely gave away too much of this movie. Like the first trailer was like cool and interesting when it's like, you know, desert, and then Finn pops into frame and we get like that. But like, yeah, then like seeing the we're home, Chewie we're home kind of stuff, like robs that a little bit in the movie, but it's still like a cool moment in the movie to see Han Solo and Chewbacca back aboard the Millennium Falcon, especially since we haven't seen it in 3 movies, because of the prequels and stuff. Like, but then we have like that whole sequence with the Rathtars or whatever. And it's like, this is like, I don't know if I needed that sequence. Like it's a fun little action sequence, but I don't think it really serves anything in the way of like the larger story. So it's like, okay, cut that 10 minutes out of the movie and you're not missing too much. But yeah, like and then the elements of like, how does Maz Kanata have the lightsaber? That's a story for another time. Meaning J.J. Abrams was never planning on like giving an answer to that. It was just like, he really liked the idea of continuing on that lightsaber, and using that like iconography without having to actually explain why it's there, how it's there, anything like that. So like, those are the things that like jump out at me as like, damn it, J.J. Abrams. Like there was never a reason for that to have like come back up in conversation past that moment. So that was the time to tell that story. And now maybe it'll be told in some kind of like, you know, extended like Mandalorian episode or something like that. Who knows? Maybe. So yeah, I think those are my frustrations. And to the point you brought up, Logan, of like, is this movie like a carbon copy of A New Hope? I mean, like, the comparisons are there because it does have a lot of like beats of A New Hope. It's not the example I always point to is Hangover 2. That was basically like, if you took the plot of Hangover 1 and put it on like one of those transparencies from like elementary school, and then like wrote the Hangover 2, you've got beat for beat what that movie is. Like, it's not that bad, but it is, you know, a rebel thing kind of with secret information that the Empire's looking for, gets put in a droid and then like makes its way to...
It's very... Yeah, I mean, like, I've always said that I think it's... I mean, like, it definitely takes homages and like, I think references things from the first movie, but like, I think you're doing this... I've always said, like, you're doing this movie disservice. Like, this movie is very different from A New Hope still, right? And like, because the argument always, to me, is never... Yeah. It like always gets boiled down to just like, they made New Hope again. And it's like, well, no, that's not what they did at all. Like, these characters are different versions of their characters, right? Like, I think you said it really well, where like, they are, you know, it is... Rey is essentially like kind of their version of what Luke Skywalker looks like, but she's very different, right? And like, Poe is very different than Han.
We know
and
that
Finn
now,
is
but
a
at
completely new character,
when the film
right?
starts,
So,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was I was gonna say.
My screen paused, and so when you took a pause, I thought that like you were done talking. So my apologies. I will say, they actually flip it on us, where like from the trailers and stuff, and from the introduction of the film, and almost all the way through the film, we see Rey is not. We don't think Rey's the Luke character. We think Rey is the Leia character. We think Finn is the Luke character.
I mean, I never thought of Rey as the Leia character.
Well, I don't like.
I mean,
the thing
in
is, I
large
was,
part because she's the one out there hoping for bigger things or whatever on a desert planet.
well, for me, I don't like looking back on it. Like when I walked into that film and when I was watching the film, I never picked up like, oh, Rey's supposed to be like Luke. I was just like, this is Rey. She's a new character. She's super cool. She's a scavenger. She's been like waiting for her family, and she's been abandoned. So she has like these hang up and issues. Like I really took it as like not these archetype characters that we were being reintroduced to. It wasn't until later in analyses that people did on the film on YouTube videos and articles and listicles and whatnot that people pointed that out to me, that I was like, okay. But then I would also thought that, oh well, and of course this is also like the quasi gender role expectations of what you expect from the previous 6 films, where the female character is going to be the quote unquote princess type character. And the similarities are she's also the one that has been taken captive by the masked figure who, tries to torture her. And they have to go to the base to rescue her, but it's at the end of the film rather than the beginning of it, or towards the beginning of it. So, there's a lot of comparisons there. I will say that there's the story beats that people are like, well, it's just the same thing. It's like, there's a lot of the same thematic elements to it that J.J. Abrams uses and intentionally uses because he wants to, because I think he properly captures the ability to tell a new story, but make you feel like you're watching an old one. Yeah, and I think that he mastered that in Super 8. Super 8's a great example of, it's basically E.T., but it's not E.T. at all. It's completely different than E.T., but he makes you feel like you're watching E.T., which for me is not great. I don't like E.T.
It's and that's what Star Trek was like. Star Trek is taking A New Hope and putting the Star Trek characters in it. It's a thing he's been doing a long time, and I think he does it very well. It's just I understand where the criticism otherwise is coming from, and for fuck's sake, Star Wars needs to never do another Death Star or Death Star like thing.
Thank you. Okay, I was going to bring that up. That was
that's really the biggest.
Yes,
the biggest point that I can't argue against those people on, because the game, the movie even it lampshades it and says it's like another Death Star. It's like, no, it's because it's such a bigger Death Star. It's like, that doesn't make it better. It still just means you're relying on the same trope of an evil super weapon, but now it's powered by the sun instead of kyber crystals, and we didn't even know it was kyber crystals at the time or whatever. So I think that's my biggest frustration, and also continuing on with what happens to the planet Vulcan in Star Trek. J.J. Abrams continues to not know how space works, because there's no way that they would be able to see the destruction of those planets on the planet that Maz Kanata is on, or if they are seeing it, because it's somehow that bright and the laser beams are that far away, it's happening years in the past because that's how light years work. So it's I get that you have to visually present that in some way, but he just continues to it's absolutely the same destruction of Vulcan moment that you're that's not realistic at all unless they're all in the same star system or something like that, and it's just a few planets away or something. But anyway, those are the things that just annoy the crap out of me. With that out of the way, go ahead, finish your point, Cam, and then we'll dive into favorite moments.
I would 100% agree with you on Star Killer Base. Star Killer Base to me is the worst freaking thing that will be eclipsed later on. But when I saw this, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We did not need another Death Star. We already had 2. We had 2 already. And a bigger Death Star. And also, I just want to talk for a moment. First off, the Star Killer Base they've retrofitted that to basically be a giant cannon. They can't move it.
Yeah, it is.
There's
a planet.
Only 2. It's a planet. There's only 2 suns in that system. And it used both of them. Or it was in the process of using it a second time, but still, the point stands. It only has 2 shots. How are you inspiring fear through the galaxy when you blow your load and you're done? That's it.
I mean, they do effectively destroy the opponents because they
Republic.
destroy the Republic and 5 planets in the Hosnian system and all that stuff. Like,
Yeah,
I, I'm not refuting its like devastating effects. It's just like I am refuting it as a storytelling beat.
100%.
Is
I
a
would both.
pathetic like copycat of
But
the 2 movies we've seen that used in prior.
yeah, another part of the problem I have is that they're like, okay, it sucks up the power from the sun. How?
I mean,
How?
Yeah.
Like the sun is an orb. It shoots out radiation in every direction. Even if you're pulling from it, it won't like. Once again, he doesn't know how space works.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how space works. He doesn't know how suns work. He doesn't know how like the Star Killer base sucks in sun and farts out giant laser beam. That is the blueprint of the Star Killer base. And in comparison to the like majesty that is the Death Star firing sequence with all the different parts of this massive space station working in alignment, like in tandem with one another to put this collective energy together to create a single firing laser that blows up a single planet, which is awesome and cool. We just get this like 3-year-old's rendition of my base eats the sun and then it poops laser beams and destroys an entire star system.
But and I mean, both of the future movies are at fault for this. They miniaturize that tech, so it'll be okay. They can do it again in the future without needing to take away suns. Anyway, yeah.
The fact that the Star Killer base comes back to haunt me in the next 2 films makes it even worse.
I also want to point out, because Cameron insisted a few episodes ago that Jar Jar Binks was shown dying on one of those planets. Not at all happens. And I actually, like, after we did that episode, like, Jar Jar Binks does not have a canon like death shown anywhere in the saga. Like, he goes into exile and is basically like turned into a clown basically on the streets of Naboo or Theed. But he's been exiled from the Gungans once again because of giving Palpatine the power. And basically everybody hates him, but kids love him because he's a dumb goofball. And so he has made like a kid friend in some of the extended canon stuff. But yes, Jar Jar Binks does not die in the Hosnian catastrophe or whatever it's called.
Would have been cool if he did. Just saying.
That would have been such a weird little Easter egg of like throwing him in there.
So many people happy. It would have made so many people happy.
Maybe, but also like that's still like, and I mean, especially knowing what he does with Rise of Skywalker, I guess I wouldn't have put it past Abrams to placate a shitty part of the fan base. Anyway, favorite moments. What are some favorite moments in this? Frank, let's go back to you.
Yeah. One thing that definitely, I mean, it stood out to me the first time watching it, but especially now, I think we've kind of already touched on it. But I think it's not a moment, but it is just like the movie is. There's the cinematography I think is beautiful. I think it elevates like from even the other movies we've been watching. Like it's just on such a higher plane, even just on my TV, not being in the theater, you know. And I think one of the scenes that really showcases that is that last battle with Finn, Rey, and Kylo. Because it's like, it's really dark, it's in the snow, the lightsabers just pop like we've never seen before. And that was another moment where obviously CG has gotten so much better since the other movies, especially the prequels, but it's like the lightsabers and the blasters and everything looks so amazing in this movie. And especially in kind of like the sequel trilogy. Like, I know it's hard. I was trying to figure out how to describe this ahead of time, but it's like, there's so much more like realistic, like lasery and blastery than they were before. Like before, it's just like, oh, this is like a red dash. But now it's like when I look at it, it's like uneven. And the one of the things I think about is when in the first scene that's I also like a lot is when Kylo just stops that blaster bolt like in midair. Mm-hmm. And like the bolt looks incredible. It has like that force field effect around it where he's like holding it in place. And like, kind of going to Logan's earlier point, like right at the beginning of the movie, you're just pulled in, you're into it. And that's like cooler than 90% of anything that happens in the prequels is in 2 seconds when he just catches this bolt. Like, but then going back to the ending piece, like, I think that's a really awesome fight. Like, I love Kylo and his saber. And like I said, like the way the laser part of it looks, it just looks awesome. And it looks like amateurishly put together, you know, and it looks like it's not like this master Jedi saber like we've seen before. And then, yeah, I think that scene I think it's an awesome scene, and I think it's filmed super well. And that was a big takeaway for me this time, definitely.
Yeah, I think Kylo Ren's lightsaber in particular, like, and the rawness and it's so powerful that he's got like the hilts that are acting as like exhaust ports of the thing itself. Like, I love the design of it. And it does, like, it fits that character so well. And especially in, you know, we're a generation removed from Jedi and stuff. And, you know, theoretically Luke would have taught him how to build a proper lightsaber, but, you know, he's clearly working with something that's a little bit more unhinged because he's, you know, gone off the deep end a little bit to the First Order, and he is just a rage fiend, which is expertly shown in that as a prop and as a kind of an extension of him. And then, like, when we see him use it in rage, I mean, right out the gate, kind of, again, going back to that first scene when he just like straight up slices Max von Sydow like basically in half. Like, we obviously don't see him split in half, but like he just has no issue just murdering that, you know, what could be a political prisoner.
And then his afterwards, what do we do with the prisoners? Kill them all.
Yeah.
Just so callous and like.
Yeah. I mean, like, he is the like, if you were raised, like, this is one of the things that I think about and I thought about a lot more as I was watching it, is like, how commonplace is it in this universe that people know, A, that like Luke and Vader were father and son, and B, that, you know, Vader turned at the end or whatever. Like, I would imagine that Kylo at least probably knows that because Luke would have told him, and their whole family unit probably knows that information. But like, from a larger like, Hux doesn't probably know that. Hux probably thinks Vader was like, you know, master murderer until the end and stuff like that. And so there are elements where it's like, even there, like, Kylo Ren is probably blocking out this thought that there was any good in Vader, given his, you know, fascination with the character and all that stuff. So he definitely is channeling the youngling murdering Vader, as opposed to the emperor throwing Vader that we get at the end of Jedi. Cameron.
Yeah, so just to give some context, because J.J. Abrams did interviews beforehand, and then it was further explored in some in the novelization, as well as in some other expanded universe books that came out around the time of The Force Awakens. So kind of how it all works is the remnants of the Empire went to the Outer Rim and like basically cut themselves off a piece of space, and were centered around an individual known as Snoke, who united them, and the Republic basically entered a ceasefire with them. And what ends up happening is non-Republic territory in the Outer Rim is slowly taken over more and more and makes the current First Order territory. And the Resistance is founded in the Outer Rim. So this all takes place out in the Outer Rim, which is cool. But on top of that, what's going on specifically with the how Vader's respected and looked at is, if you are from the Republic, you know that Vader did turn against the Emperor in the end. Like, it is known that he is Anakin Skywalker, although I think that they might not be as specific about it as that, but they believe that Vader turned on, like, Luke convinced Vader to turn on the Emperor, and Vader was, like, quote unquote, their words, not ours, redeemed. And that aspect of it. And I think they definitely keep the, like, political fallout that happens because people find out Leia's Vader's daughter and stuff. But
I
what
mean, like,
ends up
if that were true, then she wouldn't be in the position she's at in the beginning of this movie. In this movie, so that's
some political thought, but to the point here, the First Order denies all of that. They say Luke assassinated the Emperor and Vader. Vader fought to defend the Emperor to the very end. Vader was the darks, like the hero of the First Order. He is, looked upon as kind of like this archon, this great figure of protection that would have protected the Emperor, but was slain by the evil machinations of Skywalker. And you get, so Hux believes that Vader was loyal to the end, and that it is Republic propaganda. It is fake news. It is the people who control the media and information. Once again, tying into these notions of the First Order being.
This is fine and all, but again, Kylo would not know. Kylo would know the truth because Luke would have told him, and presumably everybody the truth. And
does he trust? But Ben, does he trust? Look, he doesn't trust his Luke or his parents. But Snoke, if Snoke tells him, no, that's a lie. Vader was loyal to the Emperor. Look at how that context build the context around that scene.
None of that makes its way into the film, though. Is the bigger issue, and that's and we don't need to continue to dive down that rabbit hole. It's poorly conveyed. If that's really what if you need kind of that expanded canon to really help explain all that, then that should have been that. That's what could have been in the opening crawl instead of Luke Skywalker has vanished and where we go from there. So it's just a broader universal kind of question because it also contradicts this whole issue we've had a couple times over this series of people not really knowing what has not knowing what happened 30 years ago despite it being universe altering events and stuff like that. So the whole confusion around Luke and Han and people thinking did they really exist? Was that real? I thought that was a myth. That contradicts these other elements that you're kind of introducing. Logan.
But it also
that's what
I think that also speaks to Jakku being a backwater planet. It's a backwater trash world. Rey's been living on it her entire since she was a little kid. She didn't get she was not being kept up to date with all the latest galactic information coming through there. There's a whole point to that is in a galaxy spanning civilization, how much stock do you put into the stories people tell you, and how much stock do you put into the things, the information coming from the central rim. And their center, the central part of the galaxy, by the time it gets out to you in the game as a telephone, what ends up happening with that? Now, my point is, to the point with Kylo, would Kylo know? Kylo was most definitely probably told that about Vader. Vader was redeemed, but he has also been following Snoke and listening to Snoke for, almost 10 years? And if Snoke has been telling him, no, you were lied to, once again, this feeds into the comparison between neo-Nazis, alt-right, the alt-right fascist movements in around the world, and specifically in Europe and North America, where you have young men indoctrinated into this idea that they're being lied to and manipulated by the quote-unquote public media or the public themselves, and that we are the only ones that really know the truth, and this is how things actually work, and it feeds into conspiracy theory and all this other sort of stuff that I think is very much was what they drew on when they were creating the First Order, because the First Order is not just because the whole thing is, if the Empire were the Nazis, then the First Order is white supremacist, neo-Nazi, fascist movements in our modern times. That's the comparison J.J. Abrams was making. So. And I definitely picked up on that, for sure.
Yes,
Hux's speech especially is filled with that.
It's just the same Nazi rhetoric kind of mentality. So I don't give Abrams enough credit to add that layer of and this is the alt-rightness of that. But that's again my disdain towards Abrams coming through, I'm sure. Logan.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack in this that I kind of would sink my teeth into a little bit here, but I think that the big one for me, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of Trevor and Cam here, where I think that Star Wars has a problem with history, that I find particularly frustrating, both as someone who loves Star Wars and who loves history. It doesn't make any sense. And like, if you can be like me and mostly just accept that and be like, all right, fine, every trilogy is just going to have its own timeline and just kind of accept that, then it's fine. But like, the problem is that like, yeah, like Star Wars is a problem with history. It doesn't make any sense. People that get their memories wiped every 30 years, basically. And so like, it's this thing where like none of it makes any sense.
It remembers when it's convenient to remember, and it forgets when it's convenient to forget.
100%. And so like, you can be okay with that, or you cannot be okay with that, or you can, I mean, like, I find it annoying, obviously, but I just don't think too hard about it, and I'm mostly content, right? And like, again, that is the least of my problems with the sequel trilogy and what it will do with the timeline, is like the 30 years that people can't remember, right? Like, part of me wants to be like, yeah, like, they're on, like, again, everything Cameron just said, I really liked. The problem is that we are not shown or told that, right? Like, that's my bigger issue, right? Is that like, and again, I say that as someone who loves Force Awakens. And I don't really have any of the problems that Trevor does with this stuff. I just think it's not done well, right? I just think that, yeah, like, everyone knows who Darth Vader
I
is,
agree.
and everyone knows who Luke Skywalker is, and that's just sort of what I'm going to think, because the movies are going to give me basically 3 different versions of events, and so I'm going to pick the one I want. Essentially, based how the trilogy works by the end of the trilogy. It's like you get 3 different timelines, essentially. Like, here's what happened, and it's like we're playing a game of Clue, and it's like, all right, cool, I'm going to do my own version of, like, everyone knew who Vader was, everyone knew who Luke was. The First Order, I actually think Cameron is sort of spot on. I disagree a little bit with Trev. Like, I do think it's very alt-right neo-Nazi-esque, right? Like, I do think there are differences in terms of how their rhetoric is used and how they're presenting themselves, right? Like, Hux is not a Nazi from the 1930s Germany. He is someone who's definitely was, like, told about them decades later, and so has his warped image, right? And like, that to me is the most interesting part of Kylo Ren, is that like his own ideology is not an authentic, right, like fascist or like, you know, dictator-esque ideology from the Empire or from the Nazis. It is something that has been twisted and turned around from being taught by the little heroes of the last war, were his parents, right, and his uncle, and then also by Snoke, who, you know, I don't really give a shit about what any of the EU stuff says, because it's all just completely make-believe at this point, because we have some different timelines. And so Snoke to me is just like, he's a fucking nobody who was probably some like lieutenant in the Empire and was doing his shit now, because he's like, I saw a chance to get power and coalesce forces and keep the Empire spirit going on. So even he's a nobody essentially in the Empire, and then did stuff with it, right? So even his ideology is twisted, and then Kylo Ren's getting a secondhand version of that. Right, like, to me, the most interesting aspects of Kylo Ren in the first 2 movies, really, and then, like, parts of the third one, are when Kylo Ren is presented as someone who is a deeply troubled, like, fractured person who's basically operating on, like, 2 different wavelengths at any given moment, right? Like, he lives in 2 different realities, essentially. And I find that really interesting. When they try to get to a point in Rise of Skywalker where it's like, no, he's good, just good now, that is not, I don't find that interesting. I find him most interesting when he is so conflicted like he is throughout the first 2 movies, and he isn't sure, because he is bopping back and forth between his 2 kind of personalities that he's exhibited, because he's been influenced by 2 such strong forces in his life, right? And that to me makes his fascination with Vader even more interesting, right? Because I think, like Trevor, he knows who Vader is. Like, he's like, I don't think there's any sort of ambiguity. Like, he knows who Vader was. He knows Vader was a good guy at the end, and that makes it even more like twisted and like hard for him to grapple in his own reality. So he has to like kind of just like blank it out and like put it in its own box and close the lid on it, right? Like, Kylo Ren, I agree with Trevor, is, if he's not the best character of the sequel trilogy, he is 2 or 3, right? Like, he's right there. Like, he's so fucking good, right? Mm-hmm. And just like everything in the trilogy, he's made worse in the last movie. But he's so, especially right here, like, he's so interested in Force Awakens, because he is something that I think Vader is not. Whereas Vader, certainly, I don't think Vader works as a 3-dimensional figure, because that's not who Darth Vader is until the very end, where he becomes like a human and Luke's dad and everything. But like, in the first movies, Vader is just pure evil. Like, that is his personality. Like, there's nothing more than that. He's just the epitome of darkness and evil. And Kylo Ren is a fucking teenager, basically. Like, he's like, I don't know. Like, I'm a kid, essentially, who was abandoned when I was like 16, and raised by some like creepy snake man. And so like I don't know what any part of the world is, right? And so yeah, I lean into conspiracy theories and my own paranoid thoughts and all the feedback I'm getting, and I don't know, right? Like Kylo Ren is so authentically a three-dimensional person that like I think that makes his relationship with everyone he comes into contact with so interesting, right? And we'll get that more in the second movie where they like lean really hard into psychology of everyone to, I think, varying degrees of success. But here, I think it's so cool, right? And I think a scene that we haven't talked about that is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, even though it's like pretty low on dialogue, is just when he's getting the report back that they escaped the Millennium Falcon and there was like a girl basically that was there as well, and he just smashes the shit out of the console, right? Like you see him be angry in a way that you don't, like Vader is so much more composed, right? Like when we see Vader, he's an adult who's done this for 20 years, right? Like he is terrifying because he's so calm and he's so cool and he's so clinical, right? And Kylo Ren is this ball of rage and fury, and he can't control his emotions, right? He's swinging wildly in every direction, and that is what makes him terrifying. And so like I loved that moment of him just like unleashing his emotions, right? And even in, you know, the scene where he kills Han, it's him again bouncing back and forth between all kinds of emotions, right? Like in one moment he's not going to kill his dad, and then one moment he is, and his reactions are so interesting, and he gives the film such a pulse and propulsion throughout the entire thing. And his and Huck's dynamic I find fascinating, and I think one of the weaknesses of Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker is that they kind of make Hux over time kind of an idiot. Like it's like the Stifler effect. They just make him dumber throughout the series and more incompetent. But here he holds his own against Kylo Ren, and it's fucking rad because it's these two guys who each want to be the top dog going against each other using very different means. Like it'd be like if Grand Moff Tarkin was like, I don't know, 150 years younger, right? And so like with Vader and like that dynamic, like it's so interesting. Like those are all of my favorite parts of the movie are Kylo Ren and Hux dynamic and Kylo Ren emotional mood swings, right? And all of that stuff I find so interesting.
Yeah, I was just gonna the comparison I was gonna add is the Hux and Kylo dynamic is teenage teenage Tarkin and Vader, because that is the two roles that they're kind of playing in their dynamic. When I say I think it is less alt-right kind of centric, I'm looking at Hux as the Hitler stand-in character that we never got in the original trilogy, especially in this movie where he is out there speaking in front of everybody,
given like a Nuremberg rally
in speech, the very Nuremberg rally kind of speech and metric, which the Emperor never was. By the time we see him in Return of the Jedi, we never saw that thing, and it was more like the stormtroopers are the Nazis, but there was no Hitler character in the original trilogy, and that's more what I see Hux filling that role. But you know, I'll see that like I had not thought about it in an alt-right context, but as you guys bring it up, like I can appreciate that discussion in the narrative there.
I 100% agree with you that is very much a like that 100% fits the aesthetic of what you're referencing.
I'm sure he
but it's his for like what Logan said. It's his rhetoric. It's what he was talking about. The way he was talking about events and history and things like that were very. I could see how you could kind of be like, yeah, no, it's like, you know, him talking about how we didn't really lose World War One. Like it was forced upon us, that sort of thing. I can see that, but I also, as somebody who has been on the internet a very long time and unfortunately stumbled upon a lot of alt-right and neo-Nazi rhetoric.
You could have just ended it has been on the internet for a long time.
Yeah, I've been on the internet a long time. I know a neo-Nazi when I see ones. And Hux is 100% a neo-Nazi. No, but I also wanted to say that I think like the idea and concept behind I just want to reiterate that like Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, is a deeply traumatized character. He is somebody who has some severe internal trauma, and it is very clear from the way that he's able to use the Force that he is a very, very powerful Force user. to the extent that like we see like Rey beats him after he has been put through
he got shot by a bowcaster
in the hip. Like, people don't really think about how much of your
we
movement is
we
in
saw
your
that
hip.
explode people earlier in the movie
Yeah.
at the Maz Kanata fight. Like, we saw people go flying after getting hit by that.
It blasts apart stormtrooper armor, like laminate armor. He got hit in that, and you see him bleeding from it continuously throughout his fight and hitting it, just trying to like keep the, like, just that entire. Adam Driver is so freaking good.
Great.
He's so good as an actor, and Kylo Ren is, from the moments when he has the mask on, and like you said, he's trying to be Vader, kill them all. Like, just he's such a brutal delivery in such a casual way, like it's an afterthought. But at the same moment, oh my gosh, we're talking about cinematography, really cool moments in the cinematography where, like when Kylo stops and looks over at Finn, and just immediately knows there's something seriously wrong with this one. Yeah. Something's wrong. We need to look at it, and like tells Phasma like look at his inspect his blaster, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, immediately something is wrong. He is not, like, they even talk about like Finn, his conditioning and everything has never been like, he's never had a problem. He worked in sanitation, for Pete's sake, and like after his reconditioning, he has been a perfect soldier. And it's at that moment that, like, the moment where like his supposed friend, like that perfect like war in the trenches moment, bloody hand on the helmet, like, and it's just like perfectly put there.
Great
like
shot,
there's so many things, and I really want to talk for like I think that Kylo Ren is especially like a deeply traumatic character, a character who is clearly being forced to live in his trauma, not being past it. He is constantly subjected to his trauma by Snoke. Snoke is constantly keeping Kylo Ren / Ben Solo in his trauma. And when he was talking to his dad, and he's like, let's just say, like, Adam Driver and Harrison Ford, father-son moments are still, like, even in Rise of Skywalker, like, still to me, like, really amazing and top tier. Just because you have two really amazing actors acting off of each other. Like, it's just awesome. And sorry, Trevor, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think, like, obviously another thing that Kylo Ren is also, like, incredibly subject to is part of that trauma is, like, this massive inferiority complex because his mother and uncle are two of, the most powerful people in the universe. His grandfather was one of the most powerful people in the universe. His father is a war hero and scoundrel and stuff. And so, like, he's constantly having to live in the shadows of all of those people. And Snoke is absolutely exploiting that. And so, I just wanted to touch on that other layer that, like, is a very cool layer that we get that we never got in. We never in the original trilogy, we never have to, like, Luke doesn't have to, like, really live with a long time. Like, there's a little bit of, like, Vader's my father, how could you not tell me, Yoda kind of ness of it. But, like, he because so much of that happens, like, off screen in between Empire and Jedi, like, we don't see that it conveyed in a way that we see it, I think, just kind of constantly in Kylo Ren's face.
And to your point, Trevor, I would say that, sorry, Bruce, real quick, to your point, on top of that,
totally fine.
Luke spent his entire life believing his dad was a pilot of a space freighter.
Yeah.
On top of that. So, like, he's never had to deal with that.
Yeah. I was just going to say, too, right, like, that to me is part of what makes me think that the First Order is, like, the knockoff neo-Nazi kind of element too, is because they're all trying so hard to prove that they are this thing, right? Like, it's very, like, the neo-Nazi elements from, like, American History X, where they're all trying to prove how, like, tough they actually are and how, like, serious they actually are into this thing, right? Because, like, it's all, like, constantly being called into question, like, oh, I'm not Vader, right? And I'm not the Emperor. I'm not Grand Moff Tarkin. For, like, every one of the characters in the First Order is all trying to be, like, Snoke is trying to be the Emperor, Hux is trying to be Tarkin, and Kylo Ren's trying to be Vader, and none of them are, right? It's that thing, like, none of them are actually just, like, as diabolical as these dudes. They all have to keep, so, like, they keep having to do, like, extra bad shit to prove it, like, they're bona fides, and I love that element, right? Like, this, one of the things that I think this movie does so well is it is the first time in the Star Wars entire saga where you get the opportunity to understand, I think, legacies, right? Because the original trilogy you can't, because obviously the prequels haven't happened yet, right? And so you can't really do the same thing, and because none of them know their legacy until like into that series. Whereas here, you're immediately forced the fact of like Kylo knows his legacy, right? And Han knows what that legacy is too, right? And Luke is dealing with the ramifications of like everyone's dealing with the consequences of their legacies and the messiness of it all, right? And I love the fact that these characters, to your point, Trevor, are forced to deal with that, right? Like, Kylo Ren is from an incredibly blue chip line. But even beyond that, just like the guy who is his hero, right, is Vader. What a I mean, if you're trying to be the biggest bad guy, that's a hell of a legacy to try to go after, right? I mean, even more so when, you know, you are conflicted. Even more so when you are, right, like the son of two of the three people who brought down the Empire, right? If you want to look at it that way, right? And Han and Leia, right? And your uncle's the other guy. And so I think I love the fact that this movie and 8, and all of 8's, I think, messiness does so well is it deals with legacies, right? And one of the things that I think 9 does so unforgivably bad is it deals with legacies in like all of the worst ways possible. It doesn't understand them and tries to deal with them, right? But 7 does it so well, right? And I think Kylo Ren is, to me, one of the best examples I can think of in like any kind of medium where it is a character dealing with the legacy of all of the people that we know before, and that have, because in his case it's 2 generations of people now, right? We've had 6 movies to kind of deal with all these consequences and repercussions and legacies and cross legacy channel things, and it is so interesting to see, right? Like, this is the first one in Star Wars where we get to kind of experience history, and like all of the characters understand the history as well, right? Because in the prequels, they can't get the history because it hasn't happened yet, and the original trilogy, it hasn't happened yet in terms of filming. And so like it's really cool to get like a point in time in the Star Wars saga where like history is a thing that's felt, even if the timeline is bonkers because it doesn't make any sense, but like they still understand their history, right? And like, as kind of like weird as it is for them all to be like, I thought this was this and I thought this was this, and then Han's like, it's all true, the line still works because it is a moment almost at the audience itself to be like, yeah, like this is real, right? Like, you've like everything that's happened is all real, right? And like it wasn't just a fever dream. Like, Star Wars is like this living, breathing organism now that has passed from one generation to the next now. And so I think what it does with history, I find really interesting, and is one of my favorite elements of Force Awakens, and the way that it kind of repeatedly goes back to, right? Like the Maz Kanata stuff and like the lightsaber is like dumb on the hand of like, how'd she get the lightsaber? But to me, Force Awakens it's not even that like J.J. Abrams is asking questions to things he doesn't have the answer to. It's that like, this is a symbol movie. It is a symbolic movie in so many ways. Like, it cares about symbols, and how things are like the representations of things. The lightsaber obviously is a very powerful representation of, you know, the main character of the prequel trilogy and the main character of the original trilogy, and now being passed to what will become the main character of this trilogy. And so, yeah, like, it doesn't make any sense, but also it works really well, I think, on like an emotional level. And this movie in particular cares a lot about emotions and the emotional beats of things. And again, that's where the Kylo Ren and Han Solo theme, I think, works really well. Is it just laden with emotion? And I think Han in particular, who obviously gets a lot of, this is a very Han movie, how his character handles those emotions, right? And how his character handles every interaction with every character, I think works really well for me, right? And I think that's why I love this movie, is because it has very like Rogue One vibes for me, where, yeah, it makes A New Hope cooler. It makes the original trilogy cooler in some ways. It certainly makes the prequels cooler because it incorporates that history in a really interesting way. And it doesn't get to the problems of 8 and 9, partially because it doesn't have to answer for the things it does, but also partially because I think whereas 8 and 9 are more interested in other things, I think this movie is much more interested in like, how does this emotionally make you feel? And I think it does that really well. I think J.J. Abrams is good at that because I don't think that's what he's going for in 9. I think what he's going for in 9 is just a whole other thing, appeasing a lot of people. But
we'll get to it.
Here
we'll get to it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I
we will get
I think that scene that you kind of mentioned there, like the lightsaber scene, as despite my issues with it, it is a perfect encapsulation of what you're talking about. When it is like flashbacks and you hear all those voices from the past in like speaking to Rey and whatnot, including Alec Guinness, voice and
Ewan
all that
McGregor,
stuff
yeah.
and pulling all that in. As I've been down on the movie a little bit, I do want to celebrate something. One of the things I love about this movie that I think is certainly the first time we get it to this degree, I would say, is the humor of the movie. Again, like right from the off, we get Poe having that like, so what happens? Do I talk first? You talk first? Like, and we get that. We get Finn, what do you want to go back for? You got a boyfriend? Got a cute boyfriend there on Jakku? And we get like the BB-8 stuff is great.
The
like yeah, exactly.
thumbs up.
Or the flip off.
I was gonna say, do you read that as a thumbs up or do you read it as a middle finger? It's kind of there's your Rorschach test for BB-8. But yeah, like
always a thumbs up.
Just
Always a thumbs up.
we get the reactions to Kylo Ren freaking out. We get stormtroopers walking and being like, nope, and then like walking away. It's just beautiful visual gags that we don't often get in Star Wars. So like the humor there is absolutely something that I think was a breath of fresh air in this introduction, and that I just wasn't Lucas's forte, but also wasn't what he was trying to do. Like when he does it, he does it in C-3PO, R2-D2 moments or something like that,
or Jar Jar.
You'll get or Jar Jar on
So basically,
the complete
it's not his
wrong
forte.
end of the spectrum. Yeah,
It's just not his forte. There we go.
So I just wanted to jump on that as one of my favorite elements of this. Frank, I want to come back to you because we haven't heard from you in a little bit. Any other favorite elements that you want to touch on, celebrate? It's I every time I go in and edit these files, I always see like long batches of Cameron talking, long batches of Logan talking, and then like all of the stuff I'm doing up the top of the show. And I see Frank's stuff. I'm like, oh, I need to try and actively throw to Frank more and give Frank more of an opportunity.
10-minute Frank Pisani monologue. Go.
I was like, Frank just needs his moment. Go for it, Frank. Go off.
I just never want to drone on, especially sometimes I'll just ramble if you let me go.
I mean, that doesn't stop Cameron at all. So
hey, not just me, okay? Logan spent like the last 5 minutes talking about like nostalgia, basically summarize exhaust.
I thought it was a good point,
but I was specifically honing in on Frank's word ramble. So anyway, Frank, any other favorite moments you want to highlight and celebrate?
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of them, and I think one thing I do want to point out to or piggyback off you is that I think the humor is a great call out. Like, I do think the movie is really funny, and I think like everyone in this movie, or at least so many people, have such great chemistry just like on screen and with each other. And maybe I just am feeling that so much more coming out of the prequels. But it's like, especially just watching them back to back, it's like the movie just has like a heart and a vibe that the prequels just don't have. So that's an overall kind of thought piggybacking off of that. But another moment, I guess even further piggybacking off of that, it is one of my favorite moments of the movie, but it's when it's that like runway shot, or when Poe and Finn are like reunited and they both kind of grab each other and they're kind of excited and they had that like amazing back and forth. And I even still laugh this time when he's like, BB-8 says you like saved him and you did all this. And like, I don't know, like that was just such a great like back and forth, and they're so excited he's alive. And I think that he's like, the jacket looks great on you. Like,
he says, keep it.
Oh yeah.
Suits you. And it's like, oh my. Oh.
Romance is real. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish even going into these other sequel movies, like I do love their relationship constantly, and I know no future spoilers, but there's that part in Rise of Skywalker when Poe gets shot in like the shoulder or whatever, and Finn's reaction, like he screamed, like I was like, that's like again more feeling than anything in the entire prequel trilogy is in that one moment of him calling out Poe's name, and so that was. Though, like, I like a lot of the characters we get introduced to, and I love Kylo, and I love Poe, and I love Finn, and I love their relationship. And so that's definitely another thing I would just totally call out because that's like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, probably, even especially just for being dumb fun.
Yeah.
The core three, I will say, the core three, Poe, Finn, and Rey, are fantastic together. They're just so tremendous, and I'll never forget. After Star Wars Force Awakens came out, they're like, Daisy Ridley's working out, John Boyega's working out, Oscar Isaac eating a Cheeto. Like, it's like perfect. Like, even in their real lives, like their real friendship is such amazing chemistry that they bring it so well onto film, to the point where I will get into over the next 2 weeks about why that is so critical and why it's so fun to have Finn and Rey together, having adventures and doing fun things is so awesome, and getting Poe added into that is really awesome, and like it brings and evokes those feelings of the original trilogy's trio of characters. Like there's so much there for that, and it's very clear that these actors were chosen very largely off of their chemistry with each other, and like I know it can be seen as being read too into it, but I do not see Poe and Finn as a bromance. I see it as a romance, and like as a queer person, lot of lack of representation in media, specifically Star Wars. So like to feel like a very it could, in this film, I think if this film is this film alone, you can definitely take it as it can go either way, with it just being like an incredibly deep like friendship, or you can take it as like very deeply romantic, like the burgeoning of a really great romance. I mean, and for me, that'll always be the case. So
I hear that, but I think, and this certainly could be my own perspective skewing things, but like. The line I even mentioned, like, I always got the vibe that Finn was very interested in Rey. And obviously, like, none of that really is going to pan out over the course of the series or whatever. But, like, that's the dynamic I thought they were trying to set up and introducing. And it was a Luke and Han friendship forming between Finn and Poe is how I see it. And then, and it's that Nintendo effect of like people hyped up this idea that it was going to be Finn and Poe so much that when that wasn't the case, because that was maybe never going to be the case, like people get mad at something that they themselves created. That's kind of my thoughts on things. Like I will, watching this in just the context of the movie, I don't see a romantic relationship there. But yeah, I mean, they certainly could have gone down that route in a second movie. But as a rebuttal, he very much clearly is like asking about if Rey has a boyfriend.
Does she have a cute boyfriend? Because he wants to know, is the boyfriend cute? I'm just saying.
Then he would have been interested in going back to Jakku, but he was not actually interested in going back to Jakku.
Well, she said she didn't. She said no. She said this I think she said it's like none of your business. So
she doesn't even answer the question. Like,
she doesn't even answer that.
Yeah, she doesn't respond.
Yeah. So and if for all the people you saw on Jakku, I would definitely think that there's no hot boys on Jakku. So why go back? Just saying.
I think that it's one of the things for me where. I love this idea, right? Because I also I would love if Poe and Finn were romantically involved, but I also am someone who I also love the idea of them just being really emotionally open and authentic friends too, because I feel like there aren't that many great representations of just emotionally open and mature male friendships, right? I feel like we get a lot of female friendships on either film and TV that are like really great portrayals of female friendships, and there aren't that many involving men that are like really beyond like surface level. And so either way that Poe and Finn's relationship stakes out, whether it's romantic or not, I love it because in either one of those scenarios, they're just two men who are totally open and authentic with their emotions for each other and how much they care for one another and how much they love each other and express that love. And it's rad, right? And to Trevor's point, I think all of that core trio of characters, all of their relationships are sort of borked because they didn't have any idea what they wanted to do for the trilogy, right? It's going to become the recurring theme of this next 3 weeks here. And so I would totally not be shocked if JJ was like, I'm totally open for that. And then episode 8 happened and we don't even see any of these characters do anything together, like the whole movie, basically. They're all off on like their own side
We'll get
missions.
into it next week.
And then, in 9, they come back and it's like weird. And now Kylo Ren and Rey, and like, it's like, so... I mean, again, one of the great tragedies to me of the sequel trilogy, and like it actually really sucks, is what happens with Finn's character, right? Because Kylo Ren gets to really be cool for a lot of the trilogy, right? And Rey gets to be really cool for a lot of the trilogy and gets great moments in 8. And 9 is what it is. No one really triumphs there, but like this is really the best Finn is ever going to be.
We'll
in the
get
trilogy,
into it
I would
next
argue,
week.
this movie. And so it is kind of stuck in that regard of like that character is looking forward. That's the thing that I'm the most upset about is John Boyega is such a great talent and his character is largely wasted in the next 2 films, I think.
I
think
100% agree.
I think, and I've certainly seen other people kind of comment on this. So, but like the fact that John Boyega was the first face we saw in this iteration, and we see that great shot of him like turning on the lightsaber, like
holding the lightsaber.
It in this movie alone, it's an interesting like subversion to see a because we don't know that he's a Force or a Jedi or whatever. Like at this point, like seeing someone like that wielding a lightsaber, because that's not we have always associated that with Jedi, and it's very rare that we've ever seen non-Jedi using the lightsaber. So the fact that he's in not 1 but 2 fights with lightsaber, like clearly they were setting him up for something, and it's an interesting trope that it is like a stormtrooper that is now wielding a lightsaber here. But yeah, I think absolutely, again, like the vocal shitty racist people on the internet, like basically like berating and railing on Disney to the point that role ends up getting diminished over time is incredibly unfortunate and sucks. And like he's obviously out there being very outspoken for it, and I applaud him like to high hell for that, because he definitely got done dirty. But
to my point though, I want to say is I think the biggest problem with like it could have gone either way, and it doesn't go anywhere either way. I will say that I think the biggest problem with that comes down to representation. There is not enough, like we don't get enough open, positive friendships. We don't get enough of these like overly open, loving friendships between men in media. We just don't get that. And on top of that, we also don't get enough of non-satirical level, queer people having these relationships on television and films and whatnot. Like, we don't get this overall representation at the same level that we see from heteronormative relationships. And so, 100%. And I look at a lot of fandoms and stuff where they hitch themselves to these ideas of these queer relationships. And it boils down to, we don't get enough of it for us to feel satisfied. And so when we see things coded as what has traditionally been coded as queer, we latch onto them. And like, that's a big, like, it's a, I don't want to say it's a problem, but it is a source of contention within creators and what they intend to create, and fandom and how they react to it and how they absorb it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, like I said, either way, I love Finn and Poe's relationship, but when like J.J. Abrams does an interview and they ask him about it and he goes, well, they're soulmates, but they're friends, just friends. And I'm like, you can't say they're soulmates.
I mean, that's like,
but say that they're just friends.
and that's an issue that I have with like the marketing cycles leaning into that fandom and like basically trying to have it both ways. Like that's a larger issue that I have in and of itself.
100%.
But yes, I fully acknowledge and respect that, you know, the history of entertainment media in many forms is largely white straight stories being told, and representation that lack of representation in those other stories not being told leads to the audiences wanting to create those stories and put those stories in when the creators didn't, because the creators maybe should have thought about them but didn't. So it's unfortunate. It's just it's something that, as you know, as having done theater for many years and stuff, I struggle with that. Like the like I put that more on the creators should have been telling a more diverse story than the audience imposing a diversity into a thing that wasn't there, and then getting mad when it's like explicitly said that it's not there or something like that.
I think a part of that also is a lot of times creators will either intentionally or unintentionally code something as non-heteronormative.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it. Sometimes they do it because, I want to make a quirky character. I want to make it, but that's coded for characters that we look at and identify as being queer. And so when we see that and you say, no, it really wasn't, it feels like you're pulling the rug out from under us. And it's, I say us, this is one of the first times I've publicly talked about this. I've never talked about this public ever. From this perspective of things, and never have I taken like this stance where I am on this side of it and talking about it, and like my own experience in like that's like I'm gonna be very real. Not having enough queer icons growing up 100% impacted why I waited till I was 30 till I came out.
Yeah,
like that is a fact.
I think all of this ties into me too, to the larger conversation around who has kind of authorship and control over these characters and these franchises and these stories once they're put out into the world, right? Like how much discretion does the creator of the thing, or not even the creator, because this is not George Lucas anymore, this is just someone else taking over now.
It's the owner of the property now, really, at this point.
Yeah, have in controlling it, right? Like that, and so that I find like part of the larger conversation around that too, right? And like to me, it's less relevant in Star Wars than it is in something like Harry Potter, where JK keeps adding shit onto it. She keeps adding more bells and whistles onto it. That just makes it more complicated, I think, and more messy.
Mm-hmm.
And in her kind of,
and also she's a TERF, so fuck.
And in her frantic energy to try to like make everything fix, or like, oh, you didn't have enough of these kind of people in the thing, and she tries to like shoehorn them in, I think is just making it worse in every way, right? And Star Wars, they get around that by just like
it does
not doing it at all. Yeah, and just making it Star Wars, right? And like one of the things, again, it's a joke I always make, like one of the things I like about George Lucas, aside from the fact that he gave us Star Wars and Indiana Jones, is the fact that like he's unabashedly giving no fucks about any of that shit. He's like, I mean, like, whatever, man. Like, it's like, y'all, like, George Lucas is social. He's social, like, yeah, like, there are for sure gay people in Star Wars. There are for sure all these people in Star Wars. I'm not going to tell you the stories because I didn't tell you the stories, but they're out there, and I'm not going to try to, like, shoehorn them into my thing now. I'm just going to put, like, a pterodactyl in the background. And I'm like, I respect that energy, because, like, that to me is less offensive to my
a terrible CGI pterodactyl.
Yeah. That's way more chill to me than like J.K. Rowling being like, here's a 50-page like thing about this one character who got like name dropped in this one book, and it's like, but you didn't actually give a shit about that character. You're just getting called out on it now and try to like make it work, and it's like, that's not how this works, right? And so like to Cameron's point, it's always that balance and act in terms of like, you know, who has control over these things, right? And I think my opinions has actually sort of changed over time, where I was much more originally like, yeah, like like George Lucas or J.K., whoever the thing might be, it's their story. They can do whatever they want with it. And then over time, I've been like, but also like, I think that's true. And I also think it is equally true that like, there's no, story police out there. And if you want to say, hey, I think these two characters are romantically involved, or hey, like me, I think this part of canon is fucking dumb and I'm going to ignore it, well, then no one can tell you no, because that's just how it works, right? And I think that's also something that I think is totally legitimate, is just saying these are the pieces of the story or the characters that I enjoy, and that's parts that I'm going to attach to and latch on to and really focus on. And there are parts that I don't enjoy, either because I don't think they work or I find them problematic, right? Like a great example, I think, again, tying into this, is Indiana Jones, which is a series that I hold very dear to my heart. I love that series, right? And my appreciation for that series, and one movie in particular, has changed over the course of my life, right? Where like Temple of Doom is a racist film. And I think I never liked it, but like I think I've come to term with my life over time of being like, this movie's just racist in its depiction of Indian people, even more so now in my life, right? Where I think I've just grown up as an adult, and can recognize that, and have someone next to me who's like, hey, like this is maybe problematic in like 800 different ways. And I think it's an understanding of that like, yeah, like that is a thing that we can call out and say that's not great, and kind of push that part of the series aside and say like, we don't want this stuff, and I'm going to make it just kind of blank that out of existence and focus on the parts of the series that I do love and the parts of the characters that I do love. And the same with Star Wars for LGBTQ representation, or again, in Finn's representation for anyone who is like a person of color getting a moment on screen, right? And wanting more of their stories and wanting more of them to get either more screen time or more like comic book stories or graphic novels or TV show episodes about them, so that these universes, especially in Star Wars' case, which is the actual universe, can be more reflective of everyone that's on just this planet, let alone the entire galaxy and universe of people and aliens and shapes and colors.
Yeah. I mean, this is more of a conversation for 2 movies from now, but like, I mean, just around this whole conversation of in particular LGBTQ, like the thing that really annoys me, and Disney is the pinnacle of this, is we're putting in a moment so we can get all those headlines about like it's our first LGBTQ moment, but it's in the background of a scene that can very easily be cut from markets where that is
China.
less accepted or something like that. Instead
China's
of
not a problem with that, actually.
yeah, it was Russia, right?
Russia and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
like the United Emirates.
Saudi Arabia.
I mean, it's the like it's that bullshit of like, let's have it both ways, instead of actually deciding we're going to stand up for this thing that, you know, a large portion of our audience wants and believes in and stuff. It's saying, hey, we believe this up to the point of the almighty dollar, and fuck that noise. They did it. They did it in Star Wars. They did it in Marvel. I'm sure they will continue to do it in stupid things, and we'll continue to see like, oh, it's the first LGBTQ Disney princess. Blah blah blah.
I've so stopped caring about any of that.
And it's like, oh, hey, that happens to be the LGBTQ Disney princess that doesn't get an overseas release or some shit like that. So, like, fuck that noise. Anyway, back to celebrating Force Awakens. Any final things we want to touch on, celebrate? Another one I have, if nobody else has, is we kind of touched on it already, I guess, but the fight at the end, the lightsaber duel, both between Kylo and Finn, but then like that epic moment of Kylo going to like grab the lightsaber and it flying past him into Rey's hand, and like she is assuming that role. Like, love that, to the extent that like to Abrams' credit, like, hey, let's not give away that fight now, so let's have the Earth literally rip these two characters apart so they can't actually have this fight and they have to go retreat to their separate corners, and we'll pick this up at a later time. But I love that sequence, and in particular I love the practicality of it, which is, I love the practicality of so much of this movie, as we've kind of touched on already a little bit, but like seeing the behind the scenes stuff of that set with, you know, in London or whatever, and with like the trees built up and them actually doing that and choreographing the fight on that like snowy, completely indoor set, but like you don't know that
So
it's indoor,
rad.
you don't get that it's indoors, just like that's not something I could even fathom seeing somewhere like inserted into prequels because of just the different approaches that they decide to take. So like my opinion has definitely changed on Force Awakens over time. Like I remember going into and walking out of Force Awakens thinking like, yes, Star Wars is back. This is awesome. I love all of these elements. I love the things that are getting introduced. I love the practicality. I love the ideas that are being introduced. And then obviously the future films kind of like recontextualize and recolor that for me in a more negative light going back to this movie, but it is still a fun great time. Like I don't have a bad time watching this movie. There will be moments that are that act as like mini triggers of just like, oh, I wish. Like the thing I actually found myself thinking as I watched this movie was like, fuck it, just give us a Star Wars multiverse where you take these characters and now let like 5 different directors go off and tell us what stories they would have gone with those other characters. Like let Rian Johnson have his own his third movie. Let like somebody else take those characters and go do something. Like that's what I would love to see is
Maybe
what that like fan fiction is at this point.
Maybe one day we will. Who's to say?
Yeah.
Like, Marvel has proven anything can happen and is possible.
True.
For and people will just accept it. So.
Yeah. So yeah. Any other big moments or anything that anybody wants to celebrate, or are we good to move on into the wrap up sections?
Just real quick.
The last thing,
just Black Stormtrooper.
you can go first. Oh yeah.
Like John Boyega showing up, being the first person we ever see, be a stormtrooper, be a Black Stormtrooper, be our hero of the film with a lightsaber, and being an incredible representation of a tremendous example of awesome heroics and everything that you'd want to see out of a hero in a Star Wars film, and he encapsulates it. And to Trevor's point, like it is top of the list of like the biggest shames of the next 2 films is putting him and sidelining him when he is clearly like such a like he's so great. And John Boyega just is not going to get enough credit in the next 2 films, and it is an absolute travesty that he was not. But he was done dirty as he was.
Not even just heroics. Like I love the complexity of that character of like,
for sure,
not wanting to be a hero. Like he's done bad things. He's not looking to make that like, let's go from the complete bad to like the complete good. He's just trying to get away from everything. And he gets kind of like unwillingly brought into the fight, but he rises and meets that like challenge when it comes. And then he wants to go to Starkiller Base to save Rey. He cares about that character in whatever sense. He cares about that character that much that is why he lies about knowing how to fix this thing and save the day. He didn't have a game plan for once he got there. Nope. He's just going there to try and get Rey out. And I love that.
He used the Force.
I love that energy. And so yeah, I think that's another like we talked about the complexness of Kylo's character a ton, but I think John Boyega is right up there as well. Or Finn is up.
Yeah,
there.
Finn is 100% complex of a character, and I think actually so is Rey, and like these characters are just so great, and like the next 2 films kind of do them all really dirty in different ways. And it's part of just like not having an overall game plan of where you want to end up with things, and a lot of problems with that in regards to that. But anyway, I was just going to say I want to hear more from Frank.
Real quick, because Logan was going to jump in as well.
Oh, sorry, Logan. Want to hear more from you too?
No, I was just going to say, thank you. I love you. My 2 things are basically, I want to give a shout out because Cameron just alluded to it, which is Han Solo's line of just like, that's not how the Force works. I think is one of the funniest things that's ever been said in a Star Wars movie. It fucking gets me every single time. It's so good.
And it's Han Solo saying it. It's Han Solo saying it too.
Incredulous nature of him just being like his like accusatory thing is so good. And the other thing that we like very briefly touched on at the beginning of the podcast that I just want to bring back now is like, because it's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, is the ending of the movie, like the actual island where Luke is at. I think is like the ultimate culmination of me of like, this movie's a movie about themes, of like legacy and history, and it's a movie about emotions. And that whole that whole final scene is just, there's literally like no words. It is just like music, and like the kind of like camera cues, and it's done so well. Like if you want to see a great example of how you can convey emotions and powerful feelings without using like any dialogue, like watch that movie. I mean, watch that sequence. Like it's like 3 to 4 minutes long, but it's so well done. And like anytime I ever just want to like feel like fucking ready to go, I just listen to like the music from that scene. It's so good. I think, again, Mark Hamill does a great job saying no words, and just like his whole emotional reaction, and somehow for a guy who has no words, who's on camera for like 1 minute, somehow manages to like capture the entire movie. It's so good. You like, the movie's so engrossing that you forget at a certain point in time that we're going on a search for Luke, and so when he does kind of bring it back to that point, it is just like such a great punch and such a great pop. And like, again, going back to like being in the theater for that moment, like the crowd going nuts and like the credits rolling, like, yeah, like it's great. I think this movie sets up so much promising stuff. And then if you ask me, again, this is very divisive. If you ask me personally, it doesn't pay off on really any of it from this point onwards. But that moment is such a great high to end on, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how good I think the whole final sequence is, because I think it is, yes, so well done.
Mm-hmm. Frank, final word to you. Take us home.
I agree with a lot of what was said on both accounts there by everybody. And kind of piggybacking off of Cam's thing, one last thing I would want to point out that I do love is the new First Order Stormtrooper design. Just super badass costumes. I would probably even go out on a limb and be like, I do kind of like it a little bit more than the original. Obviously, I mean, you don't get it without the original, but it's like the way it's the white with the black and the faces, like they just look super sleek and modern. And that was such a great way to like take all their old tech and kind of like reinvent it and modernize it in such a cool way. So that's another thing I do. That's just another quick thing I wanted to give a shout out to as well, because it's a Finn always definitely reminds me of that. And especially, I know we kind of already touched on it, but that there's that like D-Day-esque battle and he watches his friends die and you get that red hand on the face. Like I think all of that is like super perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think that really pops with like that new armor. And then on the flip side of that, on one of my least favorite parts is then you get the Phasma armor.
You're not a fan of the chrome?
I don't mind how it looks. I just think Phasma is like a super underwhelming character. And I mean, I don't it was definitely one of those that somebody was like, how could we do Boba Fett? And then it's like, but done in like an infinitely way worse.
Fett. Yeah.
I never saw her as Boba Fett so much as just like, oh, that's just an action figure. Like, and it's unfortunate because like Gwendolyn Christie is like great. And she is very much like she is one of the ones that is also like undercut by this, and like I appreciate that the door then ends up being left open, that she could have been like a recurring kind of character throughout, and you know, to varying degrees. Like I appreciate that this isn't the last we see of her, but she definitely like it. I'm not one that thinks they had to have a game plan for the whole like trilogy mapped out. I think we could be living in a completely different parallel universe where like they didn't, and it came out great and everybody loved it. I think that is equal parts possible. I think just because we're conditioned to like having like the MCU mapped out or something like that, but the MCU has never like early MCU was not mapped out. Like it was like, oh, we've got like big picture touchstones and we're going to bring everybody together. But like the idea of like you had to have an arc for 7, 8, and 9 when you're making 7, would have been completely fucked anyway because of the real life passing of Carrie Fisher, and unfortunately so. But I don't think that was a thing that you needed to have. But if you had it, it would have been cool to have Captain Phasma be like the mini boss character that like pops up every movie or something like that, or she is just kind of like a continuing thorn in the side of our heroes or something like that. Or that they're always, overcoming, or maybe then she defects in the end or something like that. Like I think there's absolutely a more interesting approach to that character as opposed to what ultimately is like, hey, that was a cool new action figure, and a cool new design that got way more play in the lead up to the movies than within the actual movies themselves.
Yeah,
a great moment for Captain Phasma could have been the moment in like at the fight on the lakefront where Finn fights that stormtrooper who has that like awesome taser staff.
Yep.
That's badass.
That could have been Phasma.
Yep.
Yeah.
That could have been Phasma, just been like,
I think that every time.
Throwing away my rifle, taking out this thing, you dirt, like you scum, like you traitorous scumbag, and like berating him for being a traitor and being a failure, and like you're a, like, they dropping us the line that he worked in sanitation as like a real like all of out of nowhere, like that's what you did here is a great moment, but could have easily just been like, she could have been like calling him like sewer rat and stuff.
Yeah.
And it would have been like, sorry, sewer wampa.
Yeah. I love the fact that Captain Phasma sucks, like Boba Fett sucks, and that all these people get hyped about these characters and they're not actually that great. Like part of me is like, I really love the idea that like JJ and Rian Johnson each like in on the joke and be like, I'm gonna bring her back for the episode 8 and just have her go out again. Just knock this character down. Like, she's not that great. Like, I love it as like almost like a joke bit they were doing. Just like, yeah, like Boba Fett sucks, and we're gonna bring that character arc back in Captain Phasma and get everyone super hyped for her, and then be like, she's not actually that great though. It's one of my favorite things.
There you go. Well, that is going to do it for our conversation around this one. So let's go ahead and do our report card. What does everybody want to give this one on a scale of A+ to F? Let me pull up my doc here. So we typically, Frank, you kick these off. What do you want to give Episode 7 of The Force Awakens?
I kind of struggled with this one a bit, especially because like I am now thinking of it as in terms of the scale of the other movies, even though I know that it's not the most important thing. But then this one I think is still definitely above all the prequels for me, of course. And I think it does still kind of fall below the original trilogy for me. So I think I would give it a B+. Because it's definitely a fun movie that I enjoy, and I had more fun with it this time. It was definitely something I think you can just throw on whenever, and it is just a way better movie than a lot of the sequels and the prequels. So I think it probably would get just like a B+ for me.
Cool. Cameron, what do you want to give it?
For me, I'm in agreement with Frank. I think it's a B+. I think it's a really great, solid effort, but I also think that it is hampered down by a couple of things. Stellar Killer Base being an absolute like ludicrous thing, like a couple other things like J.J. Abrams just like not do like the things that he didn't do a great job on. Things he did a great job on, B+, like 100%. Sorry, not 100%. That'd be an A+. B+, up to 89%. Great. But the other stuff just like kind of draws it back, and I do think that I'm in agreement with Frank. I think it is above. Like when I've made these tier lists before, I've put it below Phantom Menace. I actually think it is above Phantom Menace for sure. From now on in my rankings, and I just think it goes there between the two, the sequels the prequels and the original trilogy. So. Mm-hmm.
I am in agreement here on B+ territory. For context, I looked back. I gave A New Hope an A. I am easily more inclined to throw this one on and watch this one sooner, because I think as a modern movie, it's just an easier, it goes down easier. But I think A New Hope is a better movie, a better made movie, a better told story, but it probably has some slow moments that I would be fine skipping. Whereas this is kind of like, hey, it's just like an at a pace movie. There's like, apart from, like I said, the Rathtar scene there in the middle, like, and even that is like a fun action scene. You get fun little beats with the characters and stuff, and it's a an interesting reintroduction to Han and Chewie. But yeah, I think overall, I think A New Hope is a better movie, but I am more inclined to sit down and watch this one on a rainy day or something like that. So B+ for me, with the understanding that I would watch it even if I didn't give it an A. Logan, are you gonna make it a four-peat for the B+, or are you gonna buck the trend? No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give it an A-, which I believe is what I gave A New Hope, is an A-. The grades are kind of
just an A.
But,
you gave that one just an A.
Okay, yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give it an A-. I like this movie a lot. I like that. I didn't even get to the things I don't like, right? Like, I think them blowing up all the planets is completely missed. It happens in like 2 seconds, and I've seen this movie multiple times, and every time I watch it, I still don't get the sense that like anything important just happened, other than like, oh shit, planets blow up, that's a big deal. Not that like the fucking like resistance is wiped out. I've never given, and certainly when I watch it in the movie theater, that went completely over. I was like, I get that it sucks that planets blow up. That is
the
a big
Republic
deal.
fleet.
I had
the
no
fleet
idea.
of the Republic. Yeah.
I had no idea like the massive consequence of that. Like they were like the headquarters. I was like, I was not given any sort of like the moment on Alderaan is given way more importance, and that's just like a random planet in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Where this is like headquarters of big important galactic shit. And I'm like, okay, that sucks that those people are dead. I guess
it's the difference though between like the character that we know that has a relationship with that planet in Leia and Alderaan versus 5 planets that mean nothing to any character we've met in this entire saga. So
that we don't even know the name
like,
of it.
I don't.
It's
like I don't have any sort of like feelings for any of them. Like that sucks, I guess. But like, because even that is like, it's not Coruscant. It's like I don't give. It's not like the galactic headquarters. I don't give a fuck. Like it's like I don't like. I'm given no sense of like the scale of what it is. And like I'm told later on in other movies, it's a big deal. But in that moment, I'm like, I get it's a big deal because they're dead. But like whatever. So like that is dumb. Obviously, like this.
They don't even tell us that it's the new capital of the Republic. Like you have to find that out in extra stuff.
Yeah, I had no idea about like. It lays seeds. I don't like later on down the road, kind of thing. But like on the whole, I love this movie, right? Like it's just a simple thing of like I think this is a great movie, period, and then also a great Star Wars film. Since it first came out in December of 2015, I've always said I go back and forth. You could ask me any day if I'd rank it ahead of New Hope or have New Hope ahead of it. It literally depends on the thing. 6 years later, that has not changed. I still go back and forth, which I love more, which is, I guess, fitting if you ask some of the people on the internet who don't like the movie because it's the same thing. I don't know. I mean, I will probably ultimately defer because I love Cameron Abbott and New Hope is his favorite movie, and so I'll rank A New Hope ahead of it. But I think Force Awakens to me is pretty clearly the fourth best. I love it, Cam. It's pretty clearly the fourth best film. It'll be the fourth best film through the rest of the series. I think like it is like I think that top 4 to me is just like those are like fantastic movies on a different level. And then everything else is kind of on a different page throughout the rest of the saga. Unquestionably, there's a huge drop, I think. And then even in terms of when we get to the other movies, I will have I think bigger issues with some of them. So I think this is kind of my top 4 set at this point.
So then we're all in agreement, it sounds like, of this falls smack dab in between the other 2 trilogies so far at number 4.
Yep.
Cool. So our current ranking
last time we will agree probably
is I mean it's.
I think we might be able to agree on where Rise of Skywalker ends up.
I was gonna say I think we'll agree on like Rise of Skywalker not being great, but how will it rate among the prequels or something like that is probably going to be a mixed bag. The next week's really going to be probably the most interesting. But so Force Awakens then goes in at number 4. So the rankings are number 7, Attack of the Clones, number 6, The Phantom Menace, number 5, Revenge of the Sith, number 4, The Force Awakens, number 3, A New Hope, number 2, Empire Strikes Back, and number 1, Return of the Jedi. Despite it not having any midichlorians, which Logan loves so much.
Not true.
Extra credit. This is yet another one where it's basically all but one of these movies and The Mandalorian. This time around, the extra credit is The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, then The Mandalorian, and then A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then it tells you to go back and watch Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. So Revenge of the Sith misses out on this week's extra credit. Extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus? Loki ended and fucking was really cool in my opinion. I really liked it. I'm really excited for where the MCU goes from here. And I thought it was a beautiful finish to that series. Frank, you've been watching that one along?
Yeah, I've been watching every week. I still have not caught the last episode because I've just been busy with work this week and everything else. But I'm very excited. I've had some very mild spoilers, and I know everybody's very excited and hyped about it. So I can't wait to see that show. All the Marvel shows have been great, but Loki's really firing all cylinders. So anyone out there, I definitely recommend everybody check out Loki.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, sticks the landing the best of the three so far. I really liked WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier though as well. And I almost brought up Falcon and Winter Soldier as another like coding thing that you were kind of alluding to earlier, Cam, is because that's another place I feel like we've seen that conversation a lot in.
I saw the
Sam.
conversation was happening. I avoided it because, as I told my brother-in-law when he said, "Yeah, I want to tell you something about Loki," I said, "Listen, I've avoided spoilers for everything since the end of WandaVision.
Okay.
I don't know anything that happens in
Captain
Falcon and Winter Soldier. Gotcha. I don't know anything that happens
I
in
don't know if I do
Loki.
either.
I'm about to say I'm about to start Falcon and Winter Soldier soon.
Nice.
That's happening. I am working. I got time now because I'm in like I left my last job because they said, "Hey, do you want just like this time paid and not work?" And I was like, "Sure."
There you go.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you for this. Farewell. So I have like time to finally catch up on things. And so I'm going to be catching up on Falcon Winter Soldier and then Loki.
Cool.
So
Yeah. I also want to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier at some point. I'm probably going to watch Endgame again at some point because Shravi has never seen Endgame.
Oh, yeah.
And she's never been spoiled for Endgame. She has no idea what happens. So we'll probably do that at some point. I probably will have us like rewatch a few of like the big beats because it's been a few years for her. But because she's seen Infinity War.
Yeah.
she saw
not
Infinity
seen
War
it
though,
yet.
right?
Yeah.
She's seen Infinity
Yeah,
War.
uh-huh.
She just skipped the sequel to Infinity War.
She was like one of the 4 people on the planet who never saw like the highest rated movie of all time. Yeah, she's one of them.
Yeah.
And she loves the MCU. She just hasn't got around to it. So I'm excited to watch that again.
When you mentioned that like Force Awakens is
Probably
like one of
cry.
your all-time favorite like movie moments, immediately what I think of is Endgame and being
100%.
being
that
in
was
the
the other one I
crowd
was
for
trying
like
to think of,
for like that is a like I will gladly rewatch those like audience reaction videos every time and just be like, God, that was so cool.
Yeah.
We are never gonna get another moment like that, and that sucks. But like, fuck yeah, that moment was awesome.
I only remember I just remember after seeing the movie and just sitting in my car and crying
Mhm.
because of
It
the
was
spoilers of Endgame. I don't want to say
Endgame was
anything in case like
great.
Travia listens. So
Yeah,
But yeah.
Endgame's great because I watched it with Christian, and so getting out with him, and we were at Frank will know we were at Alma Draft House at Mueller, and we just like walked over to the parking garage and just spent like 2 hours just talking in the parking garage about like what just happened, because there was obviously so much like Endgame is great.
I think I've told
And
the
I'm excited
story.
to cry again, and yeah.
I think I've told this story before, but like early on in the MCU, I would always go see MCU movies like midnight screenings with my friend Brooke, and then just pretty much around the time of Force Awakens, actually, like 2015, we both kind of got in relationships and started kind of like going our separate ways, but like we're still friends and stuff. We just don't hang out all that often, and independently of one another, we booked seats next to each other at Endgame. At the Alamo Draft House in
Great.
Tempe. Like I sat down to like excited to watch Endgame. I might have even already seen it like once at that point, but like I was seeing it again or something like that. But I sat down, and then like a couple minutes later, Brooke and her partner like sat down next to me. I was like, holy shit, this is really cool. Like it was a beautiful like coming full circle moment in the MCU for me. So, and she is the one also mentioned, or I alluded to earlier in this episode, that I went and saw like the Hunger Games movies with and all that stuff. So like, yeah, that was just like that was a perfect movie going experience for me. Just like getting to see that alongside this old friend that I hadn't really like hung out with in years, just by pure happenstance and stuff, was just really cool. This movie, I think no, it wasn't this one. It was Rise of Skywalker. We ended up seeing and Josh. Oh shoot, what's his last name? From PR Stride, I think.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
John. Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Oh, Silver.
Silverman, maybe.
I thought it was Silverman
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
That's what I was
It's
thinking.
Silverman. Josh Silverman.
There you go. Like he was like 3 rows in front of me for Rise of Skywalker, and then came on our spoiler.
Oh, that's
cast
right. And then
that's
right. He came on the spoiler cast.
That.
That was actually wild. Yeah, I remember that.
So anyway, well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you to everybody for joining me to talk about The Force Awakens. Frank, we will try and get more out of you next week. I'm going to feel bad watching your audio file yet again this week. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I do. So recently, accessibility in gaming has come up recently again. I wrote an article about it last year, a little bit after a big uptick in people's interest in that came out. And like definitely, I've been I talked about it with a few other people who have gotten a lot of hate from assholes on the internet, and kind of like just being like, I wrote this article, and like part of it is a massive part of it is like I wrote it and nobody read it, so nobody like hated on me for it. But another part also is that like I definitely was not the target of their ire because of the way that I look. So I wrote that article. It is a very, very like lambast against people who are pro gatekeeping, especially in games like the Soulsborne series. And I really go in on that. So if you want to have a good read about where I talk a lot about accessibility in a franchise that certainly could use it, and it would do absolutely nothing to take away from anybody's positive experience with it, read that article, and also just read the other articles that are going around right now, and because gaming is for everybody.
Here.
Unless you're an asshole, stay away.
Yeah, I mean, even the assholes can have their games. Just don't be assholes about it, and shit on other people in the ways other people want to play. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to our other podcast, That Nerdy Sideshow. The last episode, or the most recent episode, is you and Logan doing a spoiler cast for In the Heights.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great episode, so recommend everybody check it out.
Oh,
I was actually just at the bar with a couple friends last night, and I was telling my friend Zach about it, and he was like, "Oh," and he pulled it up on the podcast app, and he was like, "In the Heights spoiler cast, I got to listen to that." And he subscribed while I was watching him.
Nice.
There we go. Frank's out there pushing, marketing, selling the podcast. That's what's
love
up.
it. Love to see it.
Grassroots approach to get our new subscribers one by one. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything you want to give some love to there, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with the In the Heights spoilercast. I always enjoy getting to talk. I think anything theater with Trevor, and In the Heights is a great movie. I really love it. I would also encourage everyone to go read Cameron's piece as well. If Cameron will be so kind as to dig it up and either send the link over or retweet it, I will also retweet it on my feed as well. And so I encourage everyone to go do that. And then finally, as of, again, the timing is so confused. As of
this goes up tomorrow.
Yesterday, part 3 of me and Trevor's Operation Tango Let's Play has gone live now. And so that was my favorite episode that we've recorded so far.
Trevor learned how to
multicam. Yeah, Trevor learned how to multicam, put a lot of work into it. Go check it out. Go leave nice comments. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of work went into that. So go check that out as well.
Yeah, it was more, I just needed to learn the multicam function, and there was one particular piece, I kept forgetting to do the step where you have to nest the files together to get because I just was like, what? I clicked the multicam thing. Why am I only seeing my feed, or why am I only seeing Logan's feed, or something like that? And so I was just missing one step. But once I got that step resolved, I was like, oh, this is infinitely easier, because it's just which screen do we want to be looking at for this moment? And my favorite part of editing those together is finally seeing what Logan was looking at and just like routinely being like, how the fuck were you not getting this, Logan? Because I was only like I was hearing the conversation.
In the moment, it's hard.
And that's like your response today was like the time was ticking down and it was super stressful or whatever.
Yeah.
And it like because there was a moment, and even in the episode, like you can already hear my frustration a little bit of like Logan is entering in 4 numbers, and when he enters in those numbers, I get a little thing that says 2 of those numbers are right, and 2 of those numbers are right, but in the wrong position. And so I tell that back to Logan, and then like he puts in some new numbers, and then my response is 3 numbers are right, 1 number is wrong. And I'm like, why did you change one of the numbers? Like I like you had all the numbers right. And so going back now and seeing his footage, and that it's not like, you know, a 9-digit code or something. It's like it was 4 digits or 4 dials, and it was a 0 or 1. So I'm just like, why did you change the 1 to like? If you had 2 zeros and 2 1s, and I told you the numbers are right, why do you suddenly try again, thinking 3 1s is going to be the solution? Like that's so.
It's definitely that thing. Yeah, in the moment where it's like, yeah, you have like 30 seconds, and I just hear 2 numbers are right, and I'm like, great, got it. I'm gonna change 2 numbers. And like you're just in the moment so much, and then like because we did that one puzzle like 3 times, and I was like, by the end, I was like, oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, in the heat of the moment, you're just like, I gotta go.
Yeah, there's another one later on where it's like it was when you were looking at like there are 4 connectors, and like my instructions are like, one of these statements is going to be true or whatever. Like it was like a word puzzle or something like that. Yeah. And not seeing what you were seeing or something like that definitely led to like some miscommunication and stuff like that. But, and then to your credit, my favorite bit of that Let's Play from my perspective already was describing the key that you needed to get as a 9 with a long dick. And then looking at the thing that you were looking at, and they're all 9s with dicks.
And that's why I was like,
and I'm like, oh,
how long is a dick? I think is what I said.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, they were way more similar than I was expecting. Like, so I was like, I'm glad he picked the right one. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun watching now the other side of that Let's Play. And I'm definitely doing my best to give everybody the context they need for like both perspectives, because obviously you're not going to be looking at both sides of everything the entire time. So it's like, oh, Logan's doing a thing, so now let's cut to my reaction or my screen for like what I needed to give him back and stuff like that. So because especially in that one, like I'm looking at like the one interface the entire time, whereas you were actually moving up and down the train and stuff like that. So you had a much more active role to play. So yeah, go check out that Let's Play. It's a fun one. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. And that's the thing I was going to shout out as well. Ton of fun. As well as all the other Let's Plays we have done on Operation Tango, because that's a fun game. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. You can find all of it over at That Nerdy Site or thatnerdysite.com or youtube.com/thatnerdysite. I, too, much like Frank, passing along the podcast to a friend, I had a new coworker start this week, and like in our initial meeting, he saw my headphones and he saw the microphone. He's like, so are you a Twitch streamer? I was like, close. I do podcasts and stuff. And I gave him our YouTube link as well. So we might have got a new follower from him too. But you can follow all of us over there. If you do feel so inclined, you can also help support us over at Patreon. Patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Just like all of our wonderful Patreon producers do, we thank them so much for helping kind of keep the feeds up and running, so we're not, just pouring a whole bunch of our own money into this fun little, after work project on the weeks and weekends. Thank you again for joining us. We will be back next week with The Last Jedi, arguably the most contentious of the Star Wars movies. So I'm looking very forward to hating all of you after that one. And Cameron, go ahead and start thinking about your intro now, and then like when I throw to you, be prepared to say it. Let's just get that out of the way there.
I thought it was going to be ready this time too. I apologize. I'm sorry.
It's good. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed, and may the Force be with you.